Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Fire, Recreation and Community Service meeting for Thursday, October 19th at 2 p.m. I'll start with the land acknowledgement. As we gather, we'd like to acknowledge on behalf of Council and their community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history. And we're also extremely grateful for their many continued displays of friendship. We also would like to thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Clerk Eric, can I have roll call, please?
Chair Legree.
Present.
Councillor McDonald.
Present.
Councillor Andrew-Dick.
Present.
Chair Legree, we have quorum.
Thank you very much. Is there any declarations of interest?
No.
Seeing none. Delegations. We'll move down to presentations, section C, and we're going to jump down. We'll come back to fire and the maintenance report. We're going to jump down to C.3. No, we're not. We're going down to where am I going down to?
C4.
C4. Yeah, sorry, C.4.
No, C.5.
No. Yeah, one more. Sorry. C.5. Community Services report presented by Director Thompson.
Oh, my apologies. Actually, it's C.4. It is the Mattaway. My apologies. That's my error. Director Aslan.
Okay. So we'll jump back to C.4, presentation on the Mattaway Activity Center expansion update presented by Director Aslan. I'll hand it over to him.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Legree. Can everybody hear me fine? Okay, that's good. And Carolyn is going to put up a presentation on share screen here. And generally, like all the updates, we're going to go through the progress to date, the schedule. Erin, is she going to be available for budget? Rob, I'm not sure if Erin is in attendance or planning to be.
No, because of the billing cycle, the last bill, the September bill hasn't been received yet, and it has just been received. So the financial summary, I can speak to it, but there'll be a fuller update at the next meeting, just in terms of how the billing cycle worked.
Okay, so limited on the budget, and then we have some pictures for you to complete the presentation. So next slide, please. So the progress is proceeding on many fronts. 98% of the masonry and ground on the ground floor and second floor have been done. The majority of the steel studs in the ground and the second floor have been done. Actually, they're just installing drywall now on the vaulted ceilings of the medicine wheel. So that's starting to take shape. The fire suppression systems are 95, and I would say probably even a little more since we've created the presentation. They're doing fire alarm system testing. There's a little bit of work to do on some of the sprinkler heads in the arena area under the walking track. The majority of the HVAC systems and ductwork is installed. It's listed as 85%. There's still balancing of the rooftop units and the ductwork in the facilities that need to be done. The scuppers, which is the overflow from the roof drain system, all of the scuppers are now installed. So that work was done in the last since the last period. The Electrical Safety Authority have done their inspections, and which allowed everything to be closed up, and everything is looking good on that front. The majority of the millwork, 90+%, is completed. So Delorier delivered and installed the majority of the cabinets. There's a couple of modifications in the daycare area, and the millwork in the Ultimate Fitness still needs to be manufactured and installed, but that's in progress as we speak. So the parapet flashing is the majority of it's done. There's a little bit of flashing just under the canoe area of the Indigenous Center. So that's proceeding. The majority of the paint has been installed, and now they're actually going through and doing kind of patching and second coats on areas that were a little light on the painting side. There's 80% of the first and second floor paints have been applied, and I'd say it's probably a little more than that at this point. The bathrooms are approximately 85%. The water rough-ins are all done, and they're actually starting to connect, fixtures like toilets and urinals, and then other, sinks and various things. So we're expecting in the next couple of weeks that the majority of the plumbing will be done. The LVT flooring is going well, and it's approximately 92% complete. We have completed the installation of the water main that goes to Lindsay Field, and that's been done in time to allow the parking lot work to take place in the curbs and the asphalt, which is underway now. But the water main is complete. And like I said, the Greenwood Paving is out there doing curb work, and XL and Lennox fencing is they're installing the fencing around the daycare areas, and they've done the fencing at the Lindsay Field area. And again, the parking lot is granular is being placed, so it's starting to really take shape on the exterior works as well. So next slide, please.
All right, it's just not advancing. One sec. Try that again. There you go.
Okay, so the majority of the interior glass has been installed. There's 2 or 3 panels left to install. All the metal doors, including all the exterior doors, the aluminum doors, all the entrances have now been installed. And so things are going well in that regard. There's still door thresholds and some of the trimming to do on the door, and the weather stripping and various things like that. As far as the ring surface repairs, they were completed a few weeks back. The dasher boards are about 95% installed, and the remainder of the dasher boards are waiting for the intumescent paint to be completed. And the intumescent paint is like a fireproofing expansion type paint that protects the beams under the walking track. The exterior foundation cement board has all been completed. It's 100% complete, so that sort of finishes below the cladding. The gym floor is about 65%, like 100% of the subfloor is in, and the second layer of plywood, and now they're actually installing the hardwood. So it's about 65, probably maybe even 70% complete now. They're expecting that the floor within the next 2 weeks will be completed. And then they'll have to be sanded down and the lines put on, and then the final finish applied as well. So the gymnasium is really coming along nicely now. The acoustic panels have been installed, and the scoreboards, and the bleachers, the 3-section bleachers are going to be installed in mid-December of this year. So some of the planned and upcoming activities to complete all the tiles in the change rooms and shower areas. So the tiling contractors on site working aggressively now to finish those areas. Door hardware is approximately 80% complete, maybe a little further. The town staff is working with our locksmith to determine a keying schedule and determining which type of locks that we're ultimately going to install for key control. And the locks that are put in there right now are just a construction lock that are under the control of ButCon. So when rooms are finished, they lock it up so that that the access is restricted and can't be damaged. So about 40% of the plumbing fixtures have been installed, and they're continuing to do that work as we speak. And next slide, please. There are some structural deficiencies that have been identified in the building, and the architects as well as the structural engineers are working with ButCon to work through the deficiencies. There was approximately a half a dozen remaining deficiencies that are being worked through, and the contractor has been methodically knocking off the deficiency work. So that will continue. The goal is to have all of the deficiencies resolved in time for the structural engineers to sign off for the occupancy permit. Okay, the medicine wheel, electrical and drywall is taking place, and there's not one square corner in the medicine wheel, so it's quite architecturally significant, and looks pretty good. I think we talked about door hardware. Gonna finish off the installation of the ring glass once the intumescent painting is done. So that's the work associated with the dasher boards, and they have probably 80% of the glass up, and the remainder will go on once the intumescent painting is done. And they're continuing to work on the gym floor. All the gas inspections have passed now, and all the rooftop units have been commissioned. So the heating system is actually ready for use and is turned on in several spaces. The roof of the medicine wheel, the contractor was going to show up this week, but I think he's been delayed by a couple of days. So the materials are arriving, and you'll see the roof go on the medicine wheel portion of the building. The landscaping, the exterior landscaping, which includes retaining walls, unit pavers, the steps and railings, have begun now. So they've got a good section of retaining wall constructed already, and they're going to charge ahead to do all the retaining wall and unit paver work, and then tie it into the remaining landscape work. And that's being done by XL Landscaping. Parking lot lighting, all the conduits have been run, and the base for the pole bases are going to be installed tomorrow. They're going to be poured. And so I think with the curbs in place now, we know where the lines are going to be, and they can place those so they'll fall between the parking spaces and not have any conflicts with the parking areas. So again, the curb and asphalt and concrete walkways are proceeding very well. There's some large sections of sidewalk that have been poured up to the entrance just off Mattaway Park Drive. So it's looking more finished every day. So new slide, please. So what's coming up as far as the work anticipated in the next little while is continue to correct these structural deficiencies, install all the benches in the change rooms and locker areas, and touch up all the concrete and the paint. Start up the refrigeration system for tempering of the rink slab, and that's proposed at the end of October and first week of November. It's about a 7-day process, and the building has to be completely sealed in, and all the expansion joints and weather caulking installed to be able to environmentally control that space. And that's the test of the concrete being brought down to a certain temperature to prove that ice making will be possible. And I think the Simcoe engineering have been working with Butcon all the way through the project. So we don't anticipate there's going to be any issues there, but it's a formal test that we have to do. A lot of the spaces in the tenant areas have been completed, and they're just finishing up the millwork and the plumbing. So that's to be completed in October. And there's one tenant space be a little further on in the year, being the Ultimate Fitness area, and they've just approved the millwork, so that's just going into production for the counters and the millwork for that space. So it's going to be delayed a little bit. Again, the gym floor should be finished at the end of October and early November for the finishes on there. The arena glass parking lot connection to the existing facilities. So there's 3 connections that sort of break between the new building and the old building. So they're making those connections now, and that is the sort of the final connections between the buildings there. And the contract cleaners have been hired. Part of every construction contract includes a final cleaning of everything from the roof, down to the base floors and windows and what have you, just to remove all the dust from construction. And that is being scheduled now. So new slide, please. Occupancy is being sought in 2 stages. So the first stage is the entire building minus the medicine wheel. and we're anticipating to finish that work in 2023 and obtain occupancy permits, which will allow the tenants to start mobilizing into the spaces and allow our programming people to begin to start the programming. And it will take some while for us to set up after we obtain occupancy. And Rob is working with the operations staff to start the programming and put the staff in place and all the other facilities required to run a facility of this size. The second stage is going to be in 2024, and I put March here as a date that we're shooting for the medicine wheel portion of the building. And you know, Rob, do you have any more to say on schedule as far as tenants?
No, we've communicated some conservative timeframes, I guess is the best way to say it, for the start of leases. Leases should be coming to the next month. Naming rights came to corporate services earlier today. And so we're working with that. We had a good productive meeting with BudCon and our consultants today, and so have some level of certainty on timeframes. And what we've communicated with tenants is fairly conservative, so that if we can move them up, we will. But at the same time, we're making sure that language finds itself into the leases, which council will see soon.
Okay, thank you very much. Next slide, please. Other things that may be significant is the slab. We've been able to achieve a 5-year warranty from the contractor to address the slab deficiencies and the corrections to the slab deficiencies. We are in discussions with Bell to bring fiber to the building, and I think through the working group there was a motivation to try to bring the highest quality internet service to the building itself. Then it will be up to the tenants there whether they subscribe to that high level service, but we're looking to have the infrastructure available at the site. Okay, the town has ordered the seating for the new arena, lockers, bleachers, net systems, and part of the net systems are the anchoring system in the gym floor to anchor the nets. So that work is proceeding, and all the orders have been placed and POs have been issued. Phone line to the new elevator has been run to the mechanical room, and I just checked it today, and I thought it was connected, but there's still a final connection to do through Bell. So that is scheduled within the next week. Again, I think I spoke to structural deficiencies, and the contractor and AAR, which is Agillian, the structural engineers that are working on the team, are working through them. They're approximately 70% resolution of those deficiencies. And the town has assigned a deficiency holdback, so we have money to do corrections of those deficiencies. But we're certain, the way things are progressing, that the contractors will do any work identified to correct the deficiencies. The intumescent paint is being finished. It's about half the thickness that it needs to be at this point, so they're continuing to apply additional coats. And intumescent paint is paint that when it reacts to heat, like if there's a fire, the heat will cause the paint to expand, many times its thickness, and provide a fire protection rating to the steel beams that support the walking track. Final room checkoffs by trades has begun. So if you go to the site, you'll see there's a sticker on each door with all the various trades, and they're starting to sign off that they're complete in various areas. And when they're complete, that allows the project management team, the engineers and the architects and the project managers to walk through and identify any final deficiencies and have those corrected before final occupancy is being sought. Project documentation such as built, integrated system testing reports, and even operator training. We're beginning to talk to the contractor about making sure the documentation is going to be in place at the end of the job, and that the operators get some orientation on the operation of the building prior to turnover. The town working group is receiving weekly updates on progress and any issues that arise in the project. And we meet on Monday mornings at 8 o'clock. And you know, we've been bringing out pretty much any issue that we encounter that has any significance. We're bringing it to the working group and having a discussion. And you know, those notes, I believe, are passed on to all of council members. The town is still retaining the service of Collier's project leaders to continue and assist with the project management. And they've been very, very helpful in managing the issues and you know, participating in the meetings and working through the technical aspects, as well as I would say an important part is just managing the relationship with the contractor and the owner and the working group, and you know, sort of, you know, putting some context to how these projects normally get delivered and how far we need to push on certain items to get things done. So it's been very helpful. And myself, I continue to work on the project along with CAO Tremblay is working on leases and naming rights with Jacob Collins, and Rob continues to receive many emails from me, keeping him involved in all aspects of the project. So sorry about that, Rob, but I think everybody should be in the know. So new slide. So I'll turn it over to Rob if he wants to just quickly go over the budget aspects as he wishes.
Rob is here. He is just on the phone that just came on. So I don't know if you just want to run through the numbers that you see here, Mike.
Yeah, sure. So I can run through the there's not a lot of new project costs that have been added to the project. We do continue to monitor change events. So currently the new construction is at 26,083,008. Construction management fees are $986,000. The design and the engineer's original estimate was $362,770. Additional engineering design is $437,000. And these numbers are not out of line with expectations of the engineering fees for a project of this size. The contingency allowance is $1.878 million, and the grand total of expenses is $29,747,338. And you know, there's more financial information that will become available as the BudCon reports mature, and those financial updates will be brought to council when finance has had time to run through them. Anything you want to say there, Rob?
Sorry, trying to get my mute button with 3 screens and staff popped in. No, I think that's adequate, and we'll have a better sense of the contingency. We did talk today about the constructor's contingency and the state of it, which is included in the new construction amount, and the state of ours, but we're on target where we were. So good news from that perspective. And then once the September billing is finalized, then we'll the next update will have a more up-to-date version of this, but nothing alarming to report.
Okay, thank you. And the last item here is that there was a $150,000 holdback for deficiencies held back on the last progress claim, and it's important that the town retain the resources to correct any issues and have some leverage to have deficiencies corrected. But to date, the contractor has been very forthcoming and very willing to continue work to correct these deficiencies, and we don't anticipate it's going to be any different moving into finishing. So here we have a contingency balance to date, and so there's a listing of numbers there on the various components that have been taken from the contingency. And if you have any questions on that, but we can entertain any questions or take them away. And but I think council's been involved in lately in awarding landscape packages in the Lindsay Field water main And essentially items that are under the value of $50,000, the delegated authority lies with Rob and the finance team. So he has approved, a couple of the expenditures under the $50,000, and he'll be reporting those to council. Okay, next slide, please. So the changes in projected increases, so the civil and earthworks and paving, curbing, lighting. I think the lighting is being advanced on a time and materials basis, just to make sure that we don't end up with a timing issue. The pole bases and everything need to be installed in conduits prior to paving, so we're doing it on time and material and really monitoring the hours that are spent by the contractor doing that. The water main replacement was brought to council. It's completed now. Additional consulting fees, third-party reviews, commissioning, engineering fees. I think we've spoken about those on previous meetings. Again, the pricing consistently coming in higher on bid packages. When we talk about these components, the fire stopping areas, the duct transfers, but the good news is that we're nearing the very end of having to go out and get bids for new products. I think the majority of the products have been purchased, and there's very limited number of new tenders that will be or bid packages that will be going out. So I think we spoke with the architect today, and he has just one other minor item to design. And so we're coming to the end of the design of the different spaces, and that will lead to coming to the end of having to go out and seek pricing, and that reduces the risk of having other pricing come in much higher. I think we're pretty much at the point where the majority of the project's been committed through existing tenders and bid packages that are out. So that's good news. So the overhead door and perimeter plate, the cultural center canoe and canopy, medicine wheel, metal roof, washroom accessories, those are work that's taking place there now, and just finishing off the final details of the spaces. So next slide, please. And here's just some select photos from the facility. So the one on the left, the dashboards and the glass are looking pretty finished at this point. The items like drinking water fountains, fire extinguishers and cabinets have been installed. Baseboard, trim, paint, floors are in the majority of the hallways and corridors. I think there's a couple of stairwells that they're just doing work on now, putting the flooring tiles and finishing off the items. The next one on the right is the gym floor hardwood being placed. So that was earlier in the week on Monday, and now it's about 70% of the hardwood has been installed already. So they're making good progress there. These next photos show some of the change room and bathroom areas. So it's a fairly it's all tiled installed, and it's a nice looking final product, and should be fairly easy to maintain. There's all the washroom partitions are yet to be installed, but they're all on site. So once all the fixtures are in and all the plumbing is connected, then they'll come and put the partitions for all the washroom stalls. And the one picture on the right was just the sort of MyFM area showing, the carpet's in and all the painting is done, and the spaces are pretty much, ready and need to be cleaned. The paper on the floor is just to protect the carpeting from damage due to people walking around in construction, but those spaces will soon be ready for inspection, and we'll do our final inspections, correct any deficiencies. And the deficiencies might be pretty small, like caulking and maybe a panel here and there. So the canoe was installed, and the middle picture shows that the curbs in the rear part of the parking lot by Lindsay Field have been installed, and they're grading up the parking lots now as we speak. And the picture on the right is the curbs adjacent to the new building. And if you go out there today, there's substantial progress where there's concrete walkways that have been poured and formed. So they're making very, very good progress. We've had a good stretch of weather and allowed the contractor to proceed with a lot of the outdoor work. Okay, next slide. I think that's it. So if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Director Roslin, for that update. As we get near the finish date, it's really important that we keep our finger on the pulse here, and you've been given good updates to the working group and council, so we all appreciate that. And like the CEO said, we had a meeting this morning, in-person meeting with N45, the engineers, the contractors and all that, and I came out of the meeting very positive with the scheduling and everything, so that's great. I do have a quick question before I open it up to the floor. With key controlled locks, once the building is opened up, will we be using fobs like we have at the town office, or is it physically going to be keys?
I think at this point there's a key system installed, and I was speaking to Randy. I think Randy Smith this morning, and I think there's maybe a benefit to consider fobs in certain areas. And I think certainly we have to move from the point where we have just the contractors' locks. Certainly there's hundreds of doors in that facility to all the interior doors and all the tenant spaces. So I think there will be a lot of keys, and we may have to identify through the operations, through Kelly and Randy and Janine, where operations require that or would benefit from fobs, and then have a different system there.
Yeah, I see their key ring now, so I can only imagine what it looked like if once we get another 100,000 square feet opened up. So,
yeah.
All right, thank you, Director. Any questions from the floor? Councillor McDonald?
Thank you, through you, Chair, and it's probably going to go to you, CEO. Just two quick financial ones. It sounds like we have a good handle with regard to stage one on in terms of the finances. Would you say stage two, which is the Indigenous Center, is that still an unknown because we still have to sort out the time and materials? Would that make sense in terms of the when we talk about 29 million plus right now? Does that make sense in terms of that's a bit of an unknown yet until we get that finished? That's the first. Yeah.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. There's only two items that are out of scope from a BUTCON perspective, is the erection of the totem pole and some decals in the medicine wheel. Those, we're hoping that some of those costs outside of the grant are recuperated through the lease. And so we've had, so we're kind of understanding what was previously negotiated, have had some preliminary chats with Chief Zor about it, and we'll fine tune that and bring that lease forward to council, where some of those capital requirements would then, just like the other leasehold improvements in the other tenant spaces, where their mill work or any additional upgrades that they selected would be charged back to the tenant over the course of the lease. So my understanding is we have a good sense of the costs, and Mike can confirm there are some elements, for instance, the exhaust for some of the elements within the medicine wheel in terms of kind of how it's going to be used. But a lot of it we're aware of, and the stuff that we're not aware of, again, all of that will form part of the lease negotiations that will then come back to council when we bring the lease.
Okay, thank you. And good to go with a second question?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, again to the CAO. We talked about a March 2024. Director Aston pointed that out in terms of we're hoping to have it finished by then. With regard to a debenture, when we start to talk finances, is that sort of a time frame we start trying to figure out the entire package? That's more for information, and go ahead.
Certainly. So as part of the 2024 budget, there will be a sense of where we are with total costs and what the formal debenture amount would be. We can only do that at close of project and total costs, as some of the leasehold improvements are being kind of cash flowed from a town perspective and recuperated over the course of the lease. So those costs don't find themselves in terms of the debenture. So the debenture will be really our true construction cost for our elements. So you'll get a picture of that as part of the budget. And at project completion, you cannot roll the debenture until the project is substantially completed. And usually with Infrastructure Ontario, there's two payments. It used to be February and August. I'm not sure if that's still the case, So the question will be, will we have everything rolled in and wrapped up from a debenture perspective in time for one payment next year? The debenture payments might hit in 2025, depending on just the timing from my experience on those things. But again, the treasurer will provide you that advice and your options as part of the budget process. And then again, at substantial completion before the adoption of the debenture related bylaws.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Andrew Dick, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Chair. CEO Tremblay, so we see 29 million up there. So right away, a lot of the citizens, they think we're $29 million over budget, and that's not the case. So I was kind of hoping if you could kind of give the public kind of a ballpark of what we're over budget today.
So the question is, are we over budget because we've approved as we went along with the project? We are, and I talked to our communication coordinator about a communication plan over the next, between now and opening, on the facility, its pieces, and I think part of that will be the budget question that you raised, and I think it's a good one. I think people are going based on 11 million when this project was first thought of, and then the 18 million at award, but then those cost overruns over time. So the $29 million figure has been fairly steady over the course of 2023. And we've been working, any kind of cost overruns have been within the contingency that you see, and you see there's still room within the contingency for some of it. So to your point, it's very complex, and we need to communicate that better. And we'll be hopefully doing that probably as part of the 2024 budget prior to opening. And then as part of our communication of the value of the project, what each components cost, the grant funding, all those elements. So I don't have that specific figure for you. We weren't gonna, and we were always, the town was always gonna debenture and was trying to recuperate through revenue the debenture, so that even the debenture amount does not mean that we're over budget, because we were always gonna debenture a part of this. So so I think we got to just pull that together for the budget process, so your council's comfortable, and then articulate it that as easily and as simple as possible with the public. And so we need to do that before we achieve substantial completion. So if that makes any sense.
Yeah, so great. Sorry about my dogs. Okay, so I just want the town, to the folks that are watching, that we don't have the exact number we're over budget. We're not over budget $29 million. We're going to have those answers for you by the time we open up. So I'm happy with that answer today. And as long as we're going to let the public know, because I think it's their right. Okay, so one more quick question, Mr. Chair, if it's okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So do we have an estimate? I know you guys don't want to give dates, but do we have an estimate minus the medicine wheel of when we're going to open this?
And I can speak to that. And certainly, we have set a date of December 2023 as the completion date for the stage 1, which includes the main building minus the medicine wheel.
Okay, so perfect. So sometime in December, Director Aslan, you're thinking sometime in December.
Well, it'll be nearing the end of December when we have substantial completion. And as Councillor Legree indicated, we did have a meeting with ButCon today, and the designer and the project managers, and what came out of that meeting was an expression of their commitment to get there and to use whatever resources they had, do weekend work and extend hours, and bring in whichever subcontractors they need to, whether they're the ones that they currently have or whether they have to go find new ones to be able to meet those completion dates. And so we are very much we set this date back a couple of months ago, and we've been working towards having the work completed in December of 2023, and that's what we're all working towards. There will be very minor elements like the millwork. The millwork in the ultimate fitness may be slightly delayed, but we're being honest with the tenants about that. But the The majority of the facility will be substantially complete and get an occupancy permit in December 2023. And that's what we're all working towards.
Okay,
I
thank
don't
you
know if
very
you have
much.
any-
Thank you very much for that answer. And I'm just gonna spill a little bit out to the public that we're not guaranteeing it, but we're estimating. We feel good about it that December 23 towards the end, we're going to be opening, but don't hold anybody to that, but we're feeling confident. Is that fair to say?
Yes, and I'll let the CAO reiterate that on,
Okay.
so you're hearing it from more than one person.
Perfect. Yeah. No, we're not holding anybody to anything. We're just saying we're confident. Okay.
Yes, and just to be clear for tenants, we're floating a February 1st official date for the start of the leases. So maybe
Okay.
some of the rumor mill starts there with a move in
Exactly.
January. But if we can get people earlier for sure, and if we can do holiday skates and but we're being very conservative to allow us the
Okay.
time. We got a lot of assurances on all aspects of the construction schedule with the contractor. Which allow us to think that we will be in good stead as the director has noted.
Okay. Thank you very much for your answers, guys.
Okay, you're
Yeah, I
welcome.
will note that there is some miscommunication out in the public. I heard a couple of times last week that we have to bust out the pad, you know what I mean, and remove it and stuff like that. So people are still thinking on that mindset. So might be an idea. I know this morning we talked in the meeting about putting some pictures out to council and stuff, but maybe communications could send some pictures out to put them on our Facebook and stuff like that. I think it's important that the public knows, they're still saying, oh, it's a second ice pad, but there's so much more there than just an ice pad. So just, to kind of get the perception of what it is and where we are with the project. So
Certainly,
food for
Chair.
thought.
And just since that meeting, I confirmed with Rudy that we'll start sending out weekly updates with photos and showcasing some of the spaces and some of the activities that Janine and Kelly, that team, is putting together, and Randy's working on bookings for ice and all those things. So we're going to start those weekly updates the week of October 30th, and we'll start running them weekly so that the public starts seeing what the facility is looking like just before they get in to get to see it and all its aspects. So the team's on it.
Perfect. Thank you. Any last minute questions?
The only thing I'll add is there will be a tour of the council through the facility in the first week of November, and we'll coordinate that with Rob and his team. and give all councillors an opportunity to go through the building and see all the different spaces.
Perfect. Thank you, Director Roslin. Okay, well, I'm going to keep going down and I'll jump back to you, Chief Guest, at the end, okay? So C.5, presentations, community services, and that'll be presented by Director Thompson and Coordinator Fraser.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to actually pass it over to Janine to do the majority of this presentation. So, and I will kind of fill in as required.
Hello. So Carolyn's just popping up our presentation online. Everyone can hear me okay? Awesome. Okay, so we can go ahead to the next slide, Carolyn.
Sorry, can you guys see that?
I can see it.
Yes, yes, we can. It's good.
Okay. I can't. Okay, one sec. Sorry, it's not sharing properly.
You'd think after COVID, we'd have this all under control, eh? And for the people watching, we do apologize. We normally don't do this, but just the town hall is under some renovations, as you know, and they've taken away our space for a couple of weeks. So,
Okay, I'm hoping that's good.
we can see it on our end.
So this is the second slide. So just what we've been up to in the past month since we last met. Our big focus is still on the fall programs. We did do some programming for National Day for Truth and Reconciliation that went really well. Still working on community outreach, already starting planning for winter programs, craft beer and food truck festival coming up in 2 days. So we're excited about that. We've finalized our instructor agreement and we are getting out the Santa Claus Parade and for Year's Eve information really, really soon. Next slide, please.
Nay, nay.
You can even go 2 slides because next slide is just saying it's a recap of our programs and events.
There you go.
So September 30th was a really big day. That was our National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. We did have a couple programs leading up to that day. So we did a blanket exercise and a creating land acknowledgement with Circle of Turtle Lodge. And those were well received, not great attendance, but they were well received for those that did attend them. And then on September 30th, we were down at Mattaway Park. We had Indigenous dancers, drummers, singers, some educational pieces, talking about residential schools. For those that came, they can attest that it was a really, really great day. Lots of information was shared, and we had a great attendance for that day with 108 people there. The picture you see there is a picture that Casey Egan took from MyFM and put that on his community spotlight for the runthroughtoday.ca. So it was nice to see that there. Next slide, please. So the community showcase evening, we partnered up with the chamber to put this together. There was lots of local businesses and organizations that put this event or put it together. So there's 35 different organizations. We were very disappointed with the attendance of the community. Only 22 people came through the doors. So that was a little disheartening after so many people put so much work into the event. But the positive light of this was that all the organizations networked and made new connections, and we were happy with that. So that was our takeaway. Next slide, please. We also did a craft and pizza day in partnership with Waihu. It was for ages 12 to 25. That is the mandate, their age group. So often we see youth and we think children, and that's not necessarily the case. If you Google what youth means, you will get an age group of about 12 to 25. So we offered this for free to the youth. There was 11 kids that came out to participate. Waihu purchased all the materials for the crafts, which was lovely of them, and Domino's donated some pizza for us to have with the youth as well. Next slide, please. We also just had our PA Day camp. So it had 18 kids registered, and we saw a lot of last minute registrations. So 1 week before the PA Day camp was supposed to run, we only had 7 registered, which is a bit alarming, and thinking, oh, do we have too much staff on? And then within that last week, we saw another, over double that register. So we had 18 total, and more than enough staff to accommodate them. We had a great day. They did slime, they played outside when the weather let up. They did a lot of stuff in the gymnasium. So, and we've got another camp coming up on November 17th for PA Day camp. We've got 6 registered already. Next slide, please. We also did a mountain bike ride within the last month. This was with Through the Woods. They are a local based organization that uses Mattaway trails usually every Friday night to offer a guided tour, and then they end up back at the BMX track. So it's nice using our resources here in town. So they did have 12 riders out for that date, and 6 were brand new to them. They had never seen them before, which is a great takeaway. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to go through all of the registration numbers here. This presentation was created on October 10th, which is over a week ago. So these numbers have changed. As you can see, a lot of the programs were sold out, which is great. And some other numbers that were really great to see as well. So we're happy with these, and we're going to keep rolling out programs, and people are going to catch on to it hopefully soon and get some more attendance. Upcoming programs and events. So as mentioned earlier, in 2 days' time, we do have our craft beer and food truck festival. We've got 10 alcohol vendors confirmed, and we did get another food vendor. So we're up to 7 food vendors. Weather's not looking great, so we have secured some large 10 by 30 tents from a friend that's lending them for free. So that's awesome. And we are excited the fire department and library are participating in this event as well to offer some more family-friendly stuff going on throughout the day. So I know many of you are volunteering. Thank you for that. And hope to see the rest of you out there at that event. So upcoming programs and events, we've got lots going on. Pickleball, it's going nuts. Pickleball is already going nuts. People are asking for more. The clinics are sold out every month, and we are offering it monthly or weekly on Mondays right now. This past Monday also sold out. So we'll take maximum 16 people for the 2 courts inside our little recreation building. And we had 16 people out this past Monday. So it's catching on with the colder weather that Renfrew's got some pickleball going on. We've got lots of other things happening though too. Yoga, salsa, self-defense workouts, African roots dance classes. And this past weekend, we just did the 10-kilometer walk run cycle for Hospice Renfrew. We had 35 people turn out, and we brought in a little over $400 for Hospice Renfrew, which was great. Thanks, Carolyn. So Renfrew Santa Claus Parade. We're excited to bring this back. The town of Renfrew is doing this solo. We don't have any partnerships as of right now, but we are looking for sponsors. It's going to happen on that traditional evening, which is the first Saturday of December. So Saturday, December 2nd, we're going to stick with an evening parade starting at 6 p.m. And it's going to start at the Armories. That's where the staging is going to happen, and end at Monroe Avenue, pardon me. And we will have Santa back at the rec center for pictures with Santa afterwards. So again, seeking sponsorship. So if you know any companies that want to sponsor, that would be awesome. And registration will be posted soon for people to register their floats. For New Year's Eve. So last year they did this as well. So just kind of taking on what they have already created and was well received by the community. So they do a breakfast with a lot of easy serve, self-serve kind of breakfast items such as cereal, croissants, fruit, coffee, juice, that kind of thing. So that will happen again. We've got a magician book for 10 a.m. and then we also have the broom ball back again, and there'll be some public skates happening in there as well. So that is a morning event kind of from 9 till noon. And then we also have our New Year's Eve dinner and dance. So we've got the Richmond Ramblers coming to play at Mattaway. We've got Schmidt's Catering doing a full sit-down buffet dinner. And we're excited for that to take place for the adults on New Year's Eve, and tickets will be coming available soon. Community outreach. Kelly, this is your part. Do you want to do this part, Kel?
Yeah, that'll be good. So show that I'm doing something. So a couple of things. We've been working with Golden Age, not just on the MOU, which will come after, but to offer a yoga program at their facility. That's one of the shared facilities partnerships that we've been developing, and it's going really well so far. We did have an RFP go out for a consultant to carry out the project through the CS Murray grant on anti-racism and inclusion and diversity. Unfortunately, we did not have any applications. So we're going back to the table to figure out how we're going to do that. We will figure it out. It's going to happen, but it's been a little bit more challenging than some other things. Work has begun on the Arts Heritage Culture Master Plan, and it looks like the company is going to push the public consultation to January, just so that you don't get community fatigue with the other master plans happening with Parks and Rec, etc. We finalized the MOU with Youth Gymnastics A, so that has been done and dusted, which is great. We're looking forward to that, and that's already started to work really well. We did the application, so we responded to all the applications. The committee that were submitted through the grants to community partners. We worked with the Youth Wellness Hub to offer the free craft and pizza day. And we'll continue to work with them on other partnerships. We've been working on budget for 2024, and the tender to replace the McDougall Mill Museum windows was awarded to Iron Rain Windows and Doors at a cost of $50,809. Noted that we had gone originally out for full wood windows to try to maintain that a real heritage. That was very expensive, so we decided just to go with all the frames will be wood. They will have an older a look that will complement the building, but they remained affordable. that's everything for us.
Thank you, Coordinator Fraser and Director Thompson. I'll open the floor up to any questions. Councillor McDonald, no. Councillor Dick, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. I just, not a question, more of a comment to your team. I just want to say how impressed I am with the amount of programs and what you're doing for this community. Now, you said something that troubled me. You said you were disappointed that you got 22 people that came out to the community day. I don't want you to be disappointed for that. That is pretty good. I've been involved with that where I've set up with my organization, and you know what, we didn't have a lot of people, but the people that come really, really appreciate it. And it's very important to the new people of Renfrew to have this. And I don't ever want you to feel disappointed or sad or anything like that. You guys did a great job. And I can tell you those 22 people that showed up really appreciated it. And it's something that we need to continue to do. I noticed that your numbers were low on a few other things. You know what? They might be low to the public's eye, but to those kids that came to those programs, it wasn't that meant so much to them to be there that day. And I will fight tooth and nail for your committees and your organizations. If people are complaining that the numbers are low, I will fight tooth and nail for you guys that we need this stuff in Renfrew. Continue doing what you're doing, and hopefully it will grow. But right now, we need to do this, and you guys are doing a great job. Just a suggestion, maybe you're already doing it, I have no idea, but utilize my FM because they're community orientated. So you can call Jamie Sobalski, who does the morning show, and he'll do a free interview with you. And you can talk about your programs on the morning show, and he has a great following. They have a free community calendar you can use. I know the town has a radio package. We can maybe make up some commercials. Social media, you do a great job on that. Those are just suggestions. I'm not telling you how to do your job. You guys are doing great. And other than that, great job. Don't stop. Keep going. You're doing a great job. And with that, Mr. Chair, I have to leave. As previously discussed, I do apologize.
Thank you, Councillor Dick. And yes, I echo his words that you guys, gals, I should say, do a great job. You have so much going on. I can't even keep up with it, to be honest with you. So, and I will note that last year I was at the Fruit Year's Eve, and it was, I couldn't believe the people coming through there and how it was all everything. So I'm looking, hopefully I can help out again this year. We'll see if I get invited or not, but yeah, thank you. Any other questions or? No. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Actually, don't go too far. I think you're up next again. C.6, library services presented by Director Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Carolyn's getting it up right away.
It's a big file. It's taking a while to load.
So I'll just say, just as an introduction, I would like to start to bring this at least, to our committee monthly, just because I think it's important to see all the stuff that's happening at the library, as well as, programs, et cetera, as well as at the town. So.
Can everybody see this? Okay.
Yes. You can go ahead to the, so this is just kind of an introduction. A lot of people know the staff, but we do have a lot of volunteers from the high schools and as well as community members on a regular basis at the library. So right now, Haven and Navy are two of our student volunteers. Anna is our new student page that was just hired, and Adele is one of our regular volunteers. So we do have a very healthy volunteer program at the library, and I'm not sure that's something that is highlighted very often. So I just thought it was a good opportunity to say a couple words about that. Next slide, please. So our outreach, the past months, we attended obviously the community showcase. We had staff attend the recovery day in Low Square. We had very good feedback. One thing the library does, we've always had a partnership with McKay Manor. So anyone staying at McKay Manor is able to use the library and they get a card and they're able to come in and use the computer. So we actually had some really good feedback stories about how the library made a difference in some of these people's lives, which was fantastic to hear. We visited the new French Catholic school in Arnprior because some of the students do live in Renfrew. So it was an opportunity for the children's librarian to go down and have a look at the facility. We reach out to Quail Creek every month, as well as early on. We've been involved with the St. Thomas Reading Buddies program, attended the Central Public Schools open house, been working with Renfrew Pride, as well as Ottawa Valley Biz Connect. So that was just a few of the outreach that were done at the library in the past month. We also have extension services. So we delivered to Homebound. We continue to do that monthly, one to two times monthly. We're at Quail Creek, Bone Chair Manor, Groves Park. We also offer tech help at Quail Creek. So people will bring out their devices and staff will help them right in the building. And we also deliver to people who cannot leave their house for whatever reason. Okay, Carolyn.
Sorry.
So we like to, one of our incentives at the community showcase was we gave away book bundles to people who visited our table and chatted with us. So these were our three winners from the past showcase. You can go ahead, Carolyn. One of the new partnerships, we were running community activity days. We sort of had it as a passive program. It was not well attended. So Community Living had reached out looking for program opportunities. So we've now partnered with the Renfrew Area Connection Center and Community Living to run weekly, I believe, program. So once a week, and it's held in the Connection Center. But anybody in the community is welcome, and we have a different topic. One week is, a game, games. One is art. Sometimes there's a guest speaker, and it's open to everyone. So far, it's been going really well, and we're hoping to continue that going forward. Okay, yeah. Some of our programs the past month, we had chalk painting. The kids quite enjoyed taking chalk outside to our front steps and just coloring it all up. It was wonderful to see. We also have Connect Dance and Knitwits. Knitwits is going well. We've been having someone coming in to teach crocheting once a month. And so that's been popular for a lot of people. Children's programs, last week we had over 80 children attending the early literacy programs, and these are just some of the ones that we have. What we have noticed is one of the ones that's really taken off is Homeschooler Hive. We did run it last year with smaller numbers, and all of a sudden it has jumped. So we're hoping to get more homeschooling families in, but it's a great way for them to connect, and has ended up being kind of a surprise popular program. Oh, you can go ahead. Yeah. So book clubs, we run a few of them. So we have for Love of Literature, which we have 8 regular members, and that changes. We have Rebel Readers for our teens, where they pick up packages each month. And so far we have 4 regular participants. Cup of Crime is coming back in November. And we also support at least 4 community book clubs through our ILL services with over 30 members. So we do get items in for all of those book clubs as well. Public Library Week is this week. So we've had some trivia, we've had a book sale, prize pack, children's table. So we try to just highlight, and this is the week where we ask everybody what they love about the library. So it's a little bit of an ego boost for for staff to at least hear what we're doing right. And people will leave some comments and stories about the library. Teens and tweens, we're starting a chess club. We have a D&D group. Our D&D group has been meeting. There's 7 of them regularly, but it can go up and down depending. We also have a coding club, which you can either do in the building or from home. And the coding club is starting to slowly pick up. And then we're starting to do things like we'll do pumpkin decorating and mask making and different items to just try to get our youth something a little bit different to do. Especially, we have a great rec stuff, so now we're trying to just offset it with some of the other types of programs. So these will be upcoming events. So one of the things actually we did do, we now have a sensory space. So it consists of a small tent, cushion mat, weighted blanket, noise blocking headphones, a small light projector that can also be connected for calming noises, as well as fidget toys. Children under 10. This is obviously one of our staff. She's not quite under 10, but she was willing to do this for the photo. They can use the space when they need just to, when they're feeling, the children are feeling overwhelmed and just need that little bit of space to calm down and reset. We also have a smaller kit that we've put together with blanket, headphones, fidget toys, and they can actually borrow it when they're in the library and go off into a corner. So it's just another way of just trying to create a space in a building that, you know, that's the one thing we're kind of lacking, is that extra space. Dyslexia Awareness Month. The library does have a whole collection of what's called decodable readers, and they're specifically for people with children with dyslexia. It's the font size, the way they're written, it makes them a lot easier to be processed. So the library does have a collection of those books. We're just trying to get the word out. So this month is Dyslexia Awareness. Upcoming class visits, we've got a grade 1 on the horizon coming to visit, as well as a grade 4. We have regular class visits generally on an ongoing basis, so it's good to see whenever we can add 1 or 2 classes to the roster. Upcoming, we've as Janine mentioned, the library's going to have a table at the Craft Beer and Food Truck Festival. There's a music jam night coming up with Matt Clement. For Remembrance Day, there's going to be displays and documentary marathon. We've started a gaming night called the League of Occasional Gamers, where we're trying to do a different board game every time. We're hoping to get some takers on that. And we also have our Saturday Film Club ongoing. Halloween events. No Frills was kind enough to donate all the pumpkins. So we are doing you can pick up, the community can pick up free pumpkins on October 24th, carve them, bring them back, and then they'll be judged on the 30th and displayed on the 31st. When we did this a couple of years ago, it was really awesome to see all the different designs and faces that came out. So it'll be great to see it again. And we're also participating in the Freaky Friday event, where we'll have a photo booth and a couple of giveaways. Children's Department, BIAC, Indigenous Drumming and Teachings continue. Freaky Friday, Dino-Vember is coming up, so there'll be lots of dinosaur-related activities for little ones. And then we just had one called Pizza, Pies, and Puzzles, which was a new one we tried that actually had full registration. So that was good to see as well. So just a couple of our challenges. Marketing, which seems to be everybody's challenge, just trying to find ways to get the word out. So this is one way. So we're hoping that, you know, everybody tells 2 people and we get more and more response from people from out there. And again, our limited space. So which is why we're going to look into kind of what we're doing with the town programming is shared spaces. So there is a meeting coming up where the library programmer, Janine, and a couple of other organizations are going to be meeting to talk about programming in the community and how we can share spaces, ensure we're not duplicating, and that's that kind of thing. So that's it for me for the month in the library.
Perfect. Thank you, Director Thompson. Again, lots of stuff, cool stuff coming up. So any questions? Nope, seeing none. Thank you very much. And then we're going to move on. We're going to jump to C point, back up to the top. C.2, presentation by Renfrew Fire, Chief Guest. I'll hand it over to you, Chief.
Thank you, Chair Legree. Everybody can hear me okay? Perfect. So this is the monthly fire report, and it is for the month of September of 2023. We'll just run through some of the slides. You'll notice on page 2, it's an annual comparison of our calls month to date. So total calls for the month of September, we were at 12 in comparison to the previous year. In 2022, we had 19 calls. So we were down a few calls this month. Smoke alarm activations, Again, we had more calls last year for smoke alarm activations, which is encouraging to see less of those in 2023. Fire alarm activations, again, we had 5 last year in this month and 3 this month. So some of the calls are trending down, which is, again, it's encouraging. Moving on to monthly training. So sorry, next slide, Carolyn, please. Thank you. So the Brantford Volunteer Firefighters attended the station for multiple training evolutions in the month of September. So firefighters performed forcible entry drills, practice deploying various hose loads and various hoses. They also spend time on the apparatus to ensure that everyone is familiar with equipment locations and the apparatus themselves. Our Ontario Fire College Learning Program, or contract, has also commenced September 1st. So it's well underway now. Volunteers are in the process of completing the online portion of the curriculum, and the program so far has been well received by all of our firefighters. In the month of September, the Brantford Fire Department was fortunate to have an expert in the field of vehicle extrication on site. So on September 28th, we had instructor Jason DeFossi conduct a full day of hands-on extrication training at Yokowski Lumber and Scrap on Lisgar Street. So Jason is an extrication specialist, instructing NFPA 1006 compliant courses to probably over thousands of people, basically in all of North America. Jason also adds his own knowledge and his experience from being on scene in multiple calls. He also has experience in the latest in vehicle construction and advanced techniques. As everybody knows, the vehicles are constantly changing. Every year they come out with new features and, more airbags. And as the vehicles change, our education has to move forward with that. It makes our job much more challenging, but it also justifies having more training on these different techniques. So having Jason on site again builds confidence in our newer members, but also our entire team to bring them up to date on current vehicles. I would also like to make a note that the Brantford Fire Department would like to thank Yokowski Lumber and Scrap. They've always been supportive of our training needs, specifically to auto extrication training. So not only do they provide the facility in the area for us to train, but they also provide us with the cars. And without this facility, it would be very difficult and it would cost substantially more. So I'd like to say thank you to them. Moving on to fire prevention. So the fire department staff attended the Brantford Fair from September 7th to 10th. This is a great opportunity not only to showcase some of our equipment and apparatus, but also to spread some fire prevention messaging to hundreds of fairgoers. So some of the things that they talk about or promote obviously are smoke alarms, carbon monoxide alarms, fire extinguishers, safe cooking practices, home escape drills. So normally we'll give out lots of different promotional items to kind of drive the message home. But obviously the children love seeing the truck, and that's important too. Firefighters were also on scene to closely monitor the demolition derby that was at the fair. There is some risk should an occupant become trapped from that, from hard impacts, or if there's vehicle fires, then our staff were on site to mitigate those. Moving on to public education. So in the month of September, we promoted a PSA, or public safety announcement. It's called Close the Door campaign. Close the Door campaign, or Close Before You Doze campaign, is relatively new to the public education messaging. And what it does is stresses the importance of closing bedroom doors before going to sleep at night. This simple action can have life-saving results should you have a tragic fire in your home. Because of all the synthetic materials, both in couches and any building construction materials, fire spread very rapidly. So closing the door can help stop or slow down that spread of fire. Next slide, please. Notable responses. So the Brantford Fire Department responded for an MBC at the intersection of Highway 17 and Bruce Street. Upon arrival, the officer conducted his scene size up. So fortunately, the occupants were not trapped. At that point, our firefighters move on, stabilize the scene and the vehicle, and contain any fluid leaks that may have occurred from the incident. On September 29th, Renfrew Fire was dispatched for a reported car on fire on Elgin Avenue in Renfrew. Upon arrival, the officer assumed command of the scene and conducted a size up. The vehicle was fully involved at the time of arrival. Fortunately, crews were quite, well, again, fortunate to extinguish the fire before it could spread to a nearby dwelling. There has also been numerous calls in the last few months from town residents regarding children and actually adults having campfires on private properties in the municipality, most recently off of Coleraine Drive. There was also areas off of the Millennium Trail has been a popular spot. So just a reminder to residents, should they see suspicious activity involving anyone, potentially lighting fires in an area that you feel is unsafe, please don't hesitate to call 911 because fires can spread very rapidly. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Guest. I'll open up to the floor for any questions. Nope, none. Seeing none. Okay, thank you. We'll move down to C.3 MLES bylaw enforcement, and I'll hand it over to Chief Guest.
Thank you, Taylor Green. So this is the monthly report for bylaw services, and as you know, Municipal Law Enforcement Services acts on behalf of the town and is contracted to deal with any bylaw issues. So just looking at a monthly comparison from September of this year to September of last year. If you look at clean yards, again, this is encouraging. Normally clean yard calls, there's quite a few of them. And we only had 2 this month compared to 19 in September of 2022. Tickets, which basically deal with parking tickets, we had 37 issued in 2022 and a total of 35 issued this month. Cat calls, which is quite popular. We had 18 calls in 2022 and we're down to 14 this month. If we move ahead one slide, total yearly comparison. So basically what this does is reflects year end. So if you look at clean yards, we had 265 clean yard calls for the year of 2022. The 157 clean yard calls, that's to date. So those numbers kind of reflect where we're standing at the end of September compared to the end of the year last year. Property calls, 2022 we had 391, and by the end of September this year we are at 247 calls. I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding this report.
Thank you, Chief. Yeah, that's good. Calls are down quite a bit this year so far, like compared to. I do have a question for you. So with regards to clean yards and property standards, are we seeing, like, with, I forget how many are there so far this year, but is it a reoccurrence of the same residents? Do we see that? Or is it all, I know some of it would be obviously, but I'm just wondering if you know what the percentage would be of they're always getting a complaint from certain resident.
As far as sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, as far as percentage goes, I don't really know how those numbers, I can get them for you. What I will say is some of these numbers are multiple visits to the same dwelling, basically to keep on top of things. They don't arrive to a complaint today and go back a month later. They will make multiple visits to that site. A lot of them are year after year, they're actually new locations.
Okay. Yeah. And yeah, I guess I was just wondering because we only did 1 charge this year and I think 2 last year. So I'm just wondering, I guess my point was, if we're going back to the same residents, can we, issue some tickets or something? But anyway, I'll leave. You don't need to comment on that. I'll leave that, but it was just a thought. Any questions, Councillor McDonald?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Thank you, Chief. The first one, touching up on clean yards too, is that complaint driven, or is it proactive? And the reason why is I've been approached by two people who have had bylaw deal with them. So again, is it proactive? They're going around and checking out yards, or is it complaint driven? That's the first question.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So Clean Yards is more of a proactive division. So when they're out doing the regular tours, basically if they see anything, then that's when they'll deal with it. So if it's based on complaint, usually that's directed under property standards. Sorry. So one is proactive and one is complaint based. Normally, if it's a Clean Yard issue, they will issue an order, or under property standards, they will issue an order and they give certain timeframes on the order, depending on the extensive work that has to be done. And the reason, I guess, why there isn't that many charges is because the work is normally done prior to that end date.
Okay, and a second question, if I'm good to go, Chair?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. Can you just explain the difference between charges and tickets? To me, they're one and the same, but obviously there's a different criteria for the data.
Sure, Mr. Chair. That is a good question, and it's one I had to ask myself and through MLES. So tickets are specific to parking tickets.
Yeah, okay.
Whereas charges are through noise or Clean Yards or property standards.
Okay, thank you.
No other questions, Councillor McDonald? That's it. Okay. Thank you, Chief Guest. Okay, Clerk Aird, I think we'll move into reports and then we'll finish up at the end with the review. Is that correct?
Probably the best approach. I know we've got some holding, but I think if we can wrap up the rest of the items, then we can focus on the last presentation.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. So moving down to section D, reports, D.1.1, Renfrew Fire Department Communications Service. So the motion is that the Fire Recreation Community Services Committee recommend Renfrew Town Council direct staff to proceed with negotiations with the Brockville Fire Department for provisions of fire dispatching services. Do I have a mover? Councillor McDonald, all in favor? Carried. And I'll hand it back over to Chief Guest.
Thank you, Chair. Agreed. So this is a fairly in-depth report, and there's lots of technical portions to it. So I'll kind of run through it quickly, and after I'll try to answer some of the questions moving forward. So in 2016, the Donnex Court IT management and consulting firm was engaged by the County of Renfrew to undertake a review of the fire communication system within the county in order to assess its current state and develop recommendations to ensure effective operations for the next 10 to 15 years. So the scope of that study included the countywide fire communication systems and the facilities used by Renfrew Central Ambulance Communications Center, also referred to as CACC. So at the time of that report, the system was over 20 years old and had never been updated with regards to equipment or system architecture. Moving forward to 2023, Renfrew County Council has recently approved the purchase of a new fire radio dispatch system at a cost of $36,142 for the use in the CAC facility for Central Ambulance in Renfrew. The system is currently being installed by Bearcom Communications. The cost of that radio dispatch system is to be allocated according to weighted value assessment amongst the 16 user agencies in the service. The allocated cost for the town of Renfrew would be $24,248.62. So this paging alerting system is as you know, is a critical component for fire service, emergency services, and responses. It's through this system that first responders or fire responders are notified of any emergency. The current system is a simple analog-based radio communication system. So basically, Renfrew Dispatch or CAC sends out the radio system. It goes through a repeater at Foy Mount and comes back to the Renfrew Fire Department. We utilize our own equipment to send out the page and alert firefighters. The county does not supply the pagers, and it's not responsible for any of that downstream transmission. So as per the above mentioned Donnex study conducted in 2016, The communication system is now over 27 years old and has never been updated with regards to equipment, again, or system architecture. The Donac study noticed the system is meeting the basic operational needs. However, it does not conform to best practices and is not up to accepted norms. It certainly does not provide the benefits of newer technologies or increased operational efficiencies or effectiveness. A lot has changed, as you know, in telecommunications or communications in the last 20 years. In 2017, the County of Renfrew Public Works and Engineering Department issued a request for information for the county communications system. So Tourist Communications Limited responded to this RFI with viable options that were made to the county. In 2023, as mentioned above, the Bearcom Communications submitted a new fire console recommendation. County Council approved this cost for purchase of the new comm centers at Renfrew CAC for a total cost of $36,142. And again, this is for use in the Renfrew CAC facility. Bearcom Canada had chosen not to address the paging and radio issues in the above mentioned submission because ultimately the choice of platforms will dictate the best path forward. So while these new fire consoles are certainly a welcome and much needed improvement for the system, unfortunately, they do not address the other equally important components of that radio system. Currently, CAC is not a full service fire dispatch center. They're designed to receive the call and send out the call details to the designated fire service. Another noted deficiency with the current system is CAC has no way of knowing that the fire department has actually received the page. And that issue was recently highlighted in the last 12 months, where we've had calls come through, whether it's on the CAC end or the Renfrew Fire end. Calls were transmitted, but they weren't paged out to any of our staff. It wasn't until later times where CAC had phoned the station to notify us of a call. CAC does not have the infrastructure to monitor our fire tactical channel. So basically what this means is the incident commander that is on scene has to constantly monitor two separate frequencies or scan two separate frequencies. So we're on our working channel with our staff on scene, and we have to monitor the CAC frequency, which is another frequency, and switch back and forth. This constitutes a workplace safety risk for all of our staff. So to ensure continuity as well as compliance with industry standards and best practices, staff are currently seeking viable options for dispatching services that are not only NFPA compliant, but will also meet NG 911 compliance prior to the 2025 deadline. An initial estimate was received for dispatching services from Brockville Fire Department. These numbers were kind of an estimate from last week in this report was written. So approximately $50,000 per year for the service, and roughly $8,000 for additional equipment. So this $8,000 is to ensure that the equipment at Renfrew Fire is, interoperability with Brockville Fire, so everything works simultaneously. So they have to attend Renfrew Fire to assess the equipment that we have and the equipment that we need. So that $8,000 equipment may fluctuate. However, the $50,000 per year for the Brockville Fire Service dispatching service is fairly accurate. Just for reference, our current dispatch service provider, Renfrew CAC, invoices on a cost recovery basis for fire call services and taking and alerting at a cost of roughly $47 per call. The total cost for dispatching in 2022 was $9,967. So if there's any questions, it's a lot of information to take in. So currently what we have is we have 17 municipalities sharing one channel or one frequency. We're trying to communicate back with CAC. So you can imagine how at times the system can become overwhelmed when there's multiple fire departments out on emergency scenes. They're all trying to reach CAC at the same time and receive information back. Whereas if we went with a dedicated fire dispatch, Renfrew uses its own dedicated channel. We're always on channel 1. and it's always monitored by that dedicated fire dispatch. Currently, the Renfrew Tactical Channel is not being recorded. If we have a Rockville fire, they would record all transmissions for future use. And the importance behind this is, should the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office or the Ministry of Labor ever require radio transmission for investigation purposes, currently that would not be able to be provided. And again, just to stress the importance to remain on one working channel as opposed to constantly scanning two separate channels. It's like having a scanner in one hand and a portable in the other, and trying to navigate all the information. And for an incident commander, it becomes very difficult. The proposed system through Rockville will also have built-in redundancies, which is another critical component. So they will have either dual public internet feeds or backup IP VPN, which is basically a dedicated service from here to Brockville. And lastly, the ability to ensure that the page is actually being received by the host department. I think that's a critical feature. Currently, there's no way of ensuring that the department is receiving that emergency page. If there's any questions, I've got to try and answer them for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief Guest. Yeah, there's two things there, like with the duty crew not knowing, like the dispatch not knowing if the duty crew actually got paged or not is a concern to me. And did you say that if you're in an active fire and you need recordings of that, they cannot produce that at this point?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So they can record any communications between CAC and fire, but they can't record any on scene. So if we are discussing, if I'm speaking to the officers on scene, for any information that we're discussing, none of that is recorded. It's only the transmission between basically the incident commander and dispatch that is recorded.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor McDonald?
Yeah, and just to confirm, we're just given approval right now to proceed with the negotiations. Am I correct on that?
That's correct. Just to proceed with negotiations with Brockville. Everything would still come back to committee and further to council with more solidified numbers.
And I also think, Chair, I also think it's a critical issue to have everything timestamped with recordings and all that sort of stuff if you're at a major event. So I think that's a major critical issue. It's a bit of a big jump, but it's the cost of doing business sometimes, right? So, okay. And so right now it's just to move it forward for the negotiations. And then we look at stuff later on when it comes back. Correct?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. I just have one or two more questions. Actually, it might be directed to the CAO Trombley. I'm not sure. Whoever wants to take it. The portion of the new radio dispatch system that the county purchased, so I think the town's share is $24,248. Are we responsible for that if we convert over to Rockville?
Through you, Mr. Chair. My understanding is the county has a reconsideration motion on how they were going to allocate the costs. The costs weren't being allocated to Armpire because they weren't users of the system. My understanding is Deep River and Petawawa might be looking for changes. I quietly suggested maybe the county should pay for it, and then through their levy, everybody pays. So we don't have certainty on that, and it would be a question on how quickly we would pull the trigger on a potential switchover, and whether the system would be in place, and county council had decided on the cost allocation. So as part of Mike's diligence and reporting back, we would have a firm answer on that. But I think we have to wait and see what happens at county council at the end of the month, where they're reconsidering the allocations.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions? Or no, actually I have one more for, I don't know who wants to take it. Do we have a contract with CAC now currently that, like, is it coming up, or I don't know, I might have been reported. I apologize if it was, but.
We do. I think we'll be looking at another contract in 2024, I believe.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. No other questions? Okay. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we'll move down to D.3.1. And the motion is that the Fire, Recreation and Community Services Committee recommend that Brentford Town Council approve the updated memorandum on the understanding with the Golden Age Activity Center. And I'll hand it over to who's talking on that. CEO Tremblay?
No, Director Thompson,
Oh, sorry, I didn't see her there. I had to roll over. I apologize.
the other curly haired person.
Yeah, I thought she left, but I had to arrow over. So, I'll hand it over to Director Thompson.
Thanks, Chair. Basically, the current agreement actually expired with the Golden Age Activity Center in 2021, so it needed to be reviewed and updated. I met with the executive director and the finance officer, and we kind of sat down and went through the expired MOU. We reviewed it, amended it, and then it was, after a draft was put together, it was sent for legal review as well. The main areas that changed was one, the financial. We're looking at increasing it in 2024 to 20,675. It had not had, so the previous contract ran 2017 to 2021, and there had been zero increase. So they got the 10,000, I think it was 10,675 a year. Every year, there was no increase, there was no nothing. So I'm proposing that we increase it to the 2675 for 2024, and then a 5% increase for the duration. Now we can go 5 years. The number of years is open for discussion as to how many years we want to enter into it. And the other thing that we added was an appendix talking about the in-kind contributions, so that the activity center would be able to, for example, use our digital signs for once a month to post. They'd be able to have a place in our digital newsletter and share some of their stuff on our social media platforms, and also that they would be able to have the use of a meeting room at Mattaway twice a year. So it just kind of enhanced the partnership. My feedback was that the executive is very happy with this. So we are, so I want to bring the draft forward, and hopefully we can look at getting an updated MOU.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, CEO.
If I can just add, the one thing about these partners is that they leverage these funds to access provincial funding. So it is required, and there was a session with provincial staff with all these centers, and I know Whitewater Region's trying to get one from my experience there. So the funding we give them is really important in terms of leveraging other funds. The other thing is that if the Golden Age didn't exist and is not sustainable, if you've seen their job postings, what they're able to recruit and the work they do with the limited budget that they do have, this extra funds goes a long way. And if they weren't able to do it, what I always caution is this investment would mean that we would have to provide a lot of these services at a much greater cost. So as the director noted, yes, it is an increase, but had been stable since 2017. And if we added up cost of living increases since 17, they would be significant. So they're important partners for what we do. We try, and the team has done a lot of good work to try to collaborate and offer programs and mutual beneficial for the community. But I just want to put that into context in terms of the increase, the important role they have, and how they use our funds to leverage provincial funding for their ongoing operations.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that. Do I have a mover? Councillor McDonald, any questions? Councillor McDonald?
Yeah, CEO, I agree with everything you said. They're an important part. We utilize it for my mother-in-law, and they're outstanding. So I'm just curious in terms of, I know we've almost doubled the funding we're going to give them, and I understand that. Is there more of a rationale for that? And I'm pro them. I want that to be clearly understood. How do we get that number is maybe what I'm looking for. And the other thing, if you can top up on as you're dealing with this, is the 5% versus the rate of inflation. I get where we're going, but if you can just maybe explain that a bit more. Thank you.
So the original for 2024, the town of Renfrew gave a substantial amount to the RVH golf tournament this year. So it was already in that budget this year, so that if we move it into the golden age next year, it actually won't affect the budget amount overall, because we're just reallocating what we had put into the golf tournament over into the golden age. So that was kind of the rationale of where that came from. And the 5% was kind of just a starting negotiation with the golden age. It was sort of a goodwill. You know, it's definitely can be negotiable. I mean, council can decide on you know, what they would like to return with, but it was just sort of a number to look at because they had not had an increase in so many years. Just a goodwill gesture to try to sort of bump them up a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Don't have the mute thing figured out either. See, all in favor? Carried. All opposed? Seeing none. Okay, we'll move down to D.3.2 museum operations. And the motion is that the Fire Recreation Community Services Committee recommend Renfrew Town Council direct the Director of Library and Community Services to review the request of the Renfrew and District Historical and Museum Society, Inc. for the town of Renfrew to assume operations of the McDougall Mill Museum and bring forward an implementation plan, including a potential ongoing partnership with the Society as part of the 2024 budget. And I'll hand it over to Director Thompson again. Or do you need a drink of water first?
I did. Thank you, Chair Legree. No, I was good. And you got through that recommendation. So that's pretty impressive. So we received briefing notes that the museum, so historically the town of Renfrew has aided the Renfrew and District Historical Museum Society financially with facility related projects, provided funding for employee related costs, but there's not an operational agreement with the museum. As with other organizations in the town, it's an aging volunteer board. There's a lot of infrastructure costs that are coming up, and they are, you know, one of the main guardians of the history of the town. So they entered in a discussion, and we received briefing notes from Debbie Hill, who's the administrative treasurer for the society. And basically she reiterated that they've been struggling with retaining and attracting experienced volunteers, meeting core museum functions, and securing ongoing financial sustainability. Staffing levels are inconsistent and totally reliant on grant funding. And they don't have any financial reserves. So the request came that we look at a possibly entering into some sort of an agreement where the town would become responsible for the operating costs of the museum. I think there's definitely potential for a partnership that could be, I think we have to have more discussions and look into it a little bit more and pull it out to see what kind of financial implication it would have. So this is basically direction to begin those discussions and start looking into how we could go about helping to ensure that the museum remains part of the town and relevant, and that the infrastructure is able to be maintained as well.
Thank you, Director. CEO Trombley, go ahead.
Just to add to that, which is all relevant and important, is to note that we own the building. So the society owns the collection. So if we are to assume operations and pay for them, then that will be our responsibility. We already own the building, and the agreement would structure how the partnership would work in terms of clear roles and responsibilities. And if we were to assume operations, like we added $50,000 to the budget last year to help them sustain operations for 1 year. They did come to the previous council saying that we needed to take it on and noted Armpar's model. The other thing I should note is there is a second museum in town, also very volunteer run, that might need some support, and heritage run through. So as we look at this, we don't want council to make it necessarily a call, but we would look at what this would look like from a staffing perspective in terms of the operating costs of the museum, but also the ability then to help shape how the museum is run, but also how the museum may change and evolve, and accessibility might be improved, and how the spaces can be used for other uses. So it's an opportunity for us as the town to, one, support the volunteer base that's still here, but wants a change in its role, but then also how we look at arts, heritage, and culture broadly. So what we're looking here is to come back to you as part of the budget to see what this looks like. And then Kelly would follow up through Debbie, who then follows up with their board on how the structuring of the MOU would work, because we don't have that. So it's a good opportunity to clean stuff up, set the museum up for the future. Also how the town looks at heritage and culture. The mill is on our logo, so it's pretty critical to who we are and our brand, and who, and also the it's good that the group came and asked for help before it was too late. So I think we should view it as an opportunity for dialogue, but also planning ahead.
Director Thompson.
I just want to mention too, so I have been going back through historical documents for the museum and what has been done in the past. And what I did discover is they actually were asking for help back in 2012. So the fact that they are still managing to keep it together, I did find a lot of documents where they had come to council in 2012 saying that they were on the brink and asking for help. So they've definitely done a good job of getting it this far, I think.
Yeah, no, we appreciate that. A lot of times it's people come to you, it's almost too late. So it's good that they're reaching out to us and stuff like that. So do I have a mover? Councillor McDonald, any questions? No. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, move down to section E, communications and petitions. We have a delegation thank you letter from the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs, and it's on there if anybody wants to take a look at it. And then we'll move down to F, committee minutes. Sorry, let's pull up the motion here. That the Recreation, Fire and Protective Services Committee confirm the meetings of the committee meeting dated September 19th, 2023. Do I have a mover? Councillor McDonald. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, and then we'll move back up to section C, presentations. And we have Miss Tammy Crothers from WSCS Consulting Inc. With us. And she is going to give us a review of the winter and summer maintenance. And I don't know if you have you want to introduce her, CEO?
That mute button.
Yeah.
So the winter summer maintenance was really about what we've heard for a long time when I was hired even a year ago about everybody cuts grass, everybody plows. Why doesn't this department plow? Why does this doesn't? So one of the recommendations was to bring together those teams, and we've actually implemented that recommendation already, which is bringing together our Public Works Roads team with our Parks and Recreation team on the day-to-day maintenance and operations. So we thank Tammy and the team, including John, who are with us. I know from a council perspective, just in terms of this is a big report, and as we said this morning, this will be used as a guiding document with an implementation plan. There's some really important data here. I know council has a awards gala to attend at 5:30, so I would just suggest if we have about a 45-minute to 1 hour, understanding that this is even more, there's even more data and information here, but I just want to keep Tammy aware of the councilor's schedules. I'm not sure if you're wearing what you're wearing to the Community Awards Gala, but I just want to let you know of that time crunch for the council members. But again, good data that will help us guide decision-making into the future. So I'll pass it over to Tammy then.
Thank you very much, Chair and Robert. Yes, so I do have John Scorbahash with me. So given that this is a very large report, so I'm going to try to be expeditious without losing the focus. So I will try my best, but there is a lot here. What I'll try to do is, I think, go through the approach, et cetera, really quickly. I do want to highlight some specific things about the findings, and obviously there are some far-reaching things here. So we were asked to look at specifically, the only thing that's really important about this slide is that we were only asked to look at summer and winter maintenance activities. There's lots more, obviously, to public works and parks, programming, all of that kind of stuff. So in terms of opportunities for improvement, processes, technology, et cetera. So, and obviously in terms of reducing costs. So I just, that's probably the most important thing on this slide for the committee to recognize. We do look at sort of the 10 key questions in service delivery reviews, and in order to guide us, they're kind of the critical questions. And so when we're looking at a service, we want to know, do we need to be in the business? So regulatory requirements, what is expected? Where are some opportunities for efficiencies? Are we effective? Are we actually achieving what we need to achieve? And are there better ways, alternative ways to do business, as well as recognizing that you're also going to have changing demands. So one of the things that we do see in areas such as yours is the move away from the cities and into the towns is actually increasing the service expectations in small towns outside of Ottawa, for example. So that is having an impact. And then as you grow and have additional subdivisions, you need to be in a position to be able to respond to those growing demands. So that's basically the key points there. And this basically just says we want to look at things from a customer service perspective, internally and externally. Is there improvements in economy, efficiency, and potential increased revenue streams and improved processes? So one of the things about looking at data is there's no one municipality alike. It doesn't matter if we go across the 3,300 across Canada, you won't find two that are exactly like the town of Brantford. So that's my first proviso. But they do, and the other thing to think of, they're benchmarks that don't necessarily mean that they're doing better than you or worse than you, because we're comparing governments to governments. So I'm not comparing, world-class organizations to the municipalities. There's also many differences that you don't see when you look at data. So that's just kind of a proviso. So out of the 444 municipalities in Ontario, what I did was, and I usually do, is I look at a few elements, size in terms of population, households, land area, and population density. And I like to use about 10. And of course, your neighbor is one of the closest comparator. Arnprior is very close in size and et cetera. They've seen a lot more growth than you have, although. But my understanding is Renfrew's on the cusp of having the same thing happen in the next little period of time. And I do like to compare a little bit to different parts of the province. So you've got a couple from Lanark County. You've got ones out to the west and to the east. So it gives you a good cross section. So and the other proviso I'm going to say is these come from the financial information returns that are filed and required to be filed with the province every year. The underlying numbers, we there's assumptions made there. So policies have a lot of impact in terms of information that is reported in the FIR. For example, simple things like charge outs for equipment. Those are going to have different rates. Some municipalities don't do it. So there's things like that. Tangible capital assets, your policy around tangible capital assets and amortization impact expenses. So those are things also to recognize. But if you were to, that's why, again, you want to look at multiples. So on the just property taxes in general, this is not just for public works. Property taxes per household, which is typically used as opposed to per a population, because of course that it's basically based on properties. And I don't like to use based on assessment, because assessment does have that challenges of where you are in in the province and values. So household per household is better to look at for comparators. So on the property taxes per household, Renfrew is actually one of the lowest. On average over the comparators, it was at $1,442, and Renfrew is at $2,800 per household. So you're at some of the lower end on property taxes per household, but I do want to point out your debt is higher than most of the comparators. When I look at that, that is actually a liability in the future. So it means that those taxes have been basically funded from debt. So why do I care about that? Well, it all talks about capacity in moving forward, and does it also have? It obviously has some impacts on the funding. On the capital and operating expense per household, you are above the average. You have seen, and by the way, this is 2021. I've done some analysis over 10 years. You have seen significant increases in your capital costs over the recent period. Probably a bit of a catch-up is what I'm going to say, from what I can see. There's probably been historical underfunding on capital. If I look back 10 to 15 years. And so now you're paying a little bit of catch up. So you're a little bit over the average on that. As you can see, there's one municipality that's quite a bit higher, both on operating capital, Hanover. So this slide really talks then about reserves versus debt. So where are you in terms of reserves versus your debt load? So your reserves are lower per household than your current debt. Okay, so again, we're talking about capacity. Some municipalities have no debt. So again, it gives you the sense of where are you going to have your flexibility. So and if you look at that from a net perspective, because basically if you think of your own bank account, you've got your reserves in your bank and you've also got your debt, and how flexible and how vulnerable are you to actually be able to pay that debt. And so your reserves are not at that level. So you have some vulnerability there. When we get into, and I'm going quite fast, so I apologize, but I know I have not very much time. There's a lot of stuff here. On the FIR, municipalities are required to include their staffing. Of course, I will tell you, and I know from being in the sector, that the definitions of full-time equivalents varies. So if we look at public works staffing, on a full-time basis, you are higher than the comparators, and a little bit higher, not as much, and certainly in the part-time and seasonal, but generally but you will note that Arnprior actually does have more staffing than Renfrew does. So if you're going to look at being in we'll call it the snow belt to some degree, because you do have more snow than some of these other places, although I live outside of Perth and I can guarantee you we have lots of snow. So the staffing in the public works side is a little bit higher than the average. When we look at parks, so you're actually quite a bit lower. And I did include in here the programming staff because I can't really separate it. So it does actually not just include your maintenance staff. So on a parks and recreation staffing perspective, you're actually quite a bit below the average. The average at 44, and you're at actually at 31. I did not include Shelburne because they don't have any parks and rec staff on their FTEs. In terms of what does this mean? Your net book value of your tangible capital assets. This is basically what your constituents have invested in the town. So every household in the town of Renfrew has about $25,000 in net book value of assets that they've invested in. Okay, and on average, so that's a little bit higher than average, and that is because to some degree you have relatively because of the capital expenditures that you've done in the recent past, your historical values have increased. So your average costs have actually increased in terms of tangible capital assets. They're a bit newer in some areas. So that's really I would say the stock that they have in your town. When we start then looking at specifically parks and public works, we are able to look at the cost of roads and winter control. It is reported in the FIR. And this is probably where we can see the disparity. So your cost per kilometer is at $21,000 a kilometer. This is in 2021. The only other municipality that's higher was Goderich. So it is a little bit high. On average, about $14,000 a kilometer. So, but you know what? Really, your winter control is not where the big cost is. It's really on paved roads, traffic and roadside, and you have a little bit of bridges, but it's pretty insignificant. So street lighting, etc. In terms of cost per household, so that was cost per kilometer. Cost per household is about almost $700 a household for public works. So again, you can see that it is quite a bit higher. It's almost double the average. And so there's that'll just ask you some questions, I guess. Total transportation expenses. Now this is over 10 years. So, and it also includes amortization. And the reason is really amortization of your tangible capital assets are a cost of utilizing those assets to deliver service. So it really should be included. And so over the 10-year period in the FIR, it's about $53 million that you've spent in transportation expenses, about $13,000 per household, which again you can see is the highest in the group. So average is about 31 million that was spent, and 7,550 per household. In terms of capital, and this is where I say, over the last 10 years, Renfrew has added significant capital costs. That is a renewal. And hopefully what we should see then is from that capital renewal that your operating costs should decline. So I guess that would be my positive outlook to those numbers. As your infrastructure is newer, you should have less and less maintenance costs attached to that. So hopefully you will see a decline in your general operating expenses. So another key piece, it is reported in the FIR. The condition of roads is supposed to be done at minimum every 2 years. And if you look at your asset management plan, the condition assessments should have been done within 2 years. And currently 50% of your roads are good to very good. And I guess the other 50% are poor to very poor. So you're right in the middle. And the reason we want to know this is we could say, look and say, okay, what is the investment in terms of operating costs and capital doing to the condition of roads? And so is there an opportunity as you increase spending in the right places on the right assets, you should actually see an increase in the state of your infrastructure. And so Public Works also does water and wastewater maintenance. So the difference is that water and wastewater are also recovered through rates. So it is a little different, and that's why I've spent quite a bit less time actually on water wastewater calculations here, because you are cost recovery and you have to be under legislation. So and you'll note that even though the costs are still higher than the average, you will note on the next couple of slides that you are cost recovery. Your net environmental cost per household is $57 to the good. So some are, of course, are seeing a little bit more. And so that's covering also your amortization. So your rates are set based on your studies, and therefore you are covering those costs. So that's the good news. Oops, happened here. Parks and recreation expenses, as I mentioned, from the staffing perspective, you're lower than the average, and so are your expenses, obviously, because if you don't have those staff, the staff is always the largest cost in any organization. So the recreation costs, recreation facility costs are obviously, your operations within your arena and et cetera. So on the park side, now I will tell you that part of the challenge that we've seen at the town is that the reporting on various activities is not descriptive enough. So there may be some crossover between facilities and parks itself. So the FIR does actually have certain requirements of what should be reported where. I am not confident that actually is the case. So that is something that should be looked at, and in our report about finance, looking at the general ledger and the activities is going to be very important for the town, so that you can actually get good information to be able to make good decisions. And of course, parks and recreation do have revenues, so it's important that we look at things from a net perspective. So on a net basis, by the way, there's very few municipalities are a cost recovery on parks and recreation, so I'm not suggesting that you have to be cost recovery. However, what I would suggest, and it's particularly to this committee, is that you should know when you're not cost recovery on different programs and make a policy around that. So in other words, that you know how much it costs, what the user fees would be if they were cost recovery, and recognize that they are being subsidized by it, because basically the user fees are not covering the costs. So it's important that you understand that and have some of those policies. Asset sustainability is a important indicator of the future. So asset sustainability is really about how much are you adding to the capital infrastructure divided by what you're utilizing, which is represented by the annual amortization costs. The target that you should be looking at is to be greater than 90%. So in other words, you're adding more than you're using. So in looking at the comparators, the average is 173% over a 10-year period. So this is 10 years. I didn't look at just 1 year because that wouldn't make sense. It's been over a 10-year period. So Renfrew is still sort of at the lower end of that. So, and what is that an indication of? It's actually going to be an indication of some of the liability that you'll have moving forward in terms of managing that infrastructure. And by the way, though, this is all assets. This is not just roads and bridges. It's all assets. And then similarly is how much of the assets are you consuming? That's the asset consumption ratio. And it's basically what's the amortization balance over the closing cost. And what that means is basically how much has been amortized versus what's left in layman's terms. And your target there is that you have less than 50%. And you are less than 50%, but sort of closing in on that number. So that's and the reason I only used 1 year in that case is because it is at a point in time as opposed to a changing ratio. I'm going to move on to the service profiles. Do you want me to stop, Chair, for any questions on the comparator information before I move on?
Yes. Is there any questions so far? No. No questions. Sorry, I couldn't see everybody there. No. Okay, you can continue on, Tammy. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so let's talk about the service profiles of the maintenance area. So Public Works, and again, this is on operations. We're not talking about capital projects. They do a variety of things. I won't get into all of them, but they are vast. You know, every Public Works organization has certain responsibilities. By the way, not all municipalities have water, wastewater distribution and collection within the organization. Some are outsourced, and I mentioned that in a couple of the slides. But very typical groupings that take care of your roads and your streetlights and respond to complaints and winter control and things that are very important, and almost nobody recognizes that they're doing it unless something goes wrong. And that's why they end up being very complaint based. But of course, they do have some standards that they have to do. So we did look at the summer winter maintenance, wastewater maintenance, and to some degree fleet and facility management, as opposed to sort of the more capital driven pieces. And their current structure is one of with foremen and lead hands and operators. And of course, you've got one mechanic and you've got machine operators delivering these services. It has changed slightly since then. So that's why I said at the beginning of this review. So all I can say about Public Works is they are bound by significant regulatory requirements. And if this doesn't scare any person to go into Public Works, I don't know what would. So the first thing I have to say is that kudos to the folks in Public Works trying to manage all of these regulatory requirements. And so the key ones from a maintenance perspective, obviously is the minimum maintenance standards for highways under the Highway Traffic Act. And the hours of service, which applies not just to Public Works, but any people driving for a living, so to speak. And of course, the Municipal Act outlines many things around that and standards for bridges. On the environmental side, of course, you have to have safe drinking water, which has its own challenges around standards and quality management. And that all flows into the requirements in the financial side of things as well, that you have to have financial plans. Now, what's kind of interesting is the water financial planning regulation, which came out, I'm going to say just, well, of course, it was a result of Walkerton, is the only requirement in the municipal sector to cover amortization. So that's part of the reason why municipalities on the other assets or other services have not necessarily covered amortization in budgets, which I have always built, well, it's fundamentally incorrect. So because that basically means you're not funding the assets to use them. So that was a huge outcome of the Walkerton inquiry. And in my opinion, that's what should happen with all assets. And then, of course, you've got your new asset management planning regulation, which is really trying to do that. Eventually, that's going to drive how you get funded. It's already happening. The OSIF funding is, they're looking at those plans. The financial information return is likely going to change to reflect that. So it's very important that that asset management plan keep updated. I'm sorry. I just lost my earbud. Hopefully you can still hear me. Okay. Okay. So where is your financials in public works? So this looking over a 6-year period, winter control is around 11%, water treatment as well, water transmission. You will see you can see that your public works expenses are actually more than 50% on the water wastewater side of things. And that's where they spend a lot of their time. When we get to roads and street lighting, et cetera, 30 to 11% in wind control. I think that's an important thing to remember, because that has affected the ability for your staff to respond to other things. And clearly having safe drinking water is always on the highest level. So that's where the effort has been. In terms of salary and wages, not as much. A lot is in on the roads, winter control side. Certainly, there's still a fair amount, but remember that, of course, on the treatment, water treatment and wastewater treatment is being managed externally, which of course is not internal salary and wages. So if we look at the overtime, we saw a dip for a period of time, and now back to an increase in 2021. Your FIR was not posted yet for 2022, so that's why I had to stop at 2021. And that came from a variety of things, and we know that inflation affected every expense line. That is why we probably saw that dip. From a few questions, we did look at your payroll to identify, are there areas for some, I guess, opportunities to reduce overtime. So your town staff, of course, are the basically provider of your winter control operations. And so as opposed to some municipalities that actually have call-ins to handle that. So it's one thing to think about. The other thing is that's unusual is that some of this is also in the supervisory area. So you got about a half FTE every year in overtime, assuming that that's how it's captured. And some of that could be also in banked time and leaves. So it is an area that we heard about that because of the time off, or I guess the bank time during the winter season, that, of course, during the other seasons, the staff are taking that time off. And so having that coverage in the summer and being able to manage the other things other than winter control are influenced by the time off. So a fairly significant amount of hours in leave. So that is something to contemplate, I guess. This is really just, you've got 68 kilometers of road, 49,000 meters of sidewalks. Why should you care about that? Well, that's a lot of sidewalks, to be honest, in a small town. So, and of course, with the minimum maintenance standards, sidewalks do have requirements to respond, also in particularly in winter control. So you have in terms, this came from your asset management plan. You have a fairly significant portion of your roads are at the 21 to 25 year range and older. So that to me represents a bit of a liability. You're getting to a point where a lot of them are getting to the end of their useful lives and are going to have some work done to them. And the fact that they are in that state is also driving up some of your maintenance expenses. And sidewalks, well, that's surprising, but the ones that are beside the road are the same age. So that's not surprising at all. You don't have a lot of bridges, thank God for you, because bridges are very expensive. So that's fine. You know, water, wastewater is got a myriad of regulatory requirements. You do have an operational plan. Most of the things that we pulled out were from your own operational plan. So certainly from a quality management perspective, the town is doing just fine. I mean, you've had your annual reports. There's no real issues there. So we did not spend a lot of time after, from that, because there's not the same I guess, risk factor that we're seeing now, because it is all already in that quality management process. So, but your pipes are starting to age, just like every other small town in Eastern Ontario. I heard you talking about Brockville. They were a client there. Some of theirs are still wood pipes. So, so yeah, very large, you've got 74 kilometers of water main to manage. And the challenge, I guess, for the staff is responding. They do respond, and they have a lot of locates. That's taking up a lot of their time with construction. So wastewater as well, similar, the ones that are downtown clearly are getting on in age. So the next sort of 20 years, you're going to see, some requirements around moving that, getting those replaced. And those are expensive because they're underground. So you got to plan them out with your road construction. Make sure you're planning your underground infrastructure at the same time. And urban storm. Again, you've got lots of culverts. You have obviously storm management mains. You got some that are certainly approaching the end of their lives. Pardon me. How will that show up? Basically, in a flood, you'll start to see storm issues. So, this is an area that a lot of municipalities have not really paid attention to be honest. It's really got to be part of the climate action plan to look at their storm management in the future. And then fleet. So one of the things that's interesting about the town is that you do have a mechanic, but he doesn't necessarily service all of the town's fleet. Partly, specialized equipment, perhaps. But for example, the recreation folks outsource all of their repairs versus, pardon me, just got to get a glass of water here. versus the public works garage is basically focused on public works trucks. There, we did do another review with your neighbors, and in that review on that joint roads, we did make the suggestion that Renfrew would be a great hub for many municipalities around you, and the idea potentially to share some facilities, garage facilities, and perhaps fleet management and fuel management. And I know you're looking at potentially a new facility, which if you've gone out there, if you probably know it's at its end of its life. And you've got not enough storage for your equipment, and it's also not conducive for good fleet management. It does not have the types of drive-through bays, etc., that you need to be able to do good fleet management, and even hoists and all of those kinds of things. It's from a health and safety perspective is certainly it's outside its time. So anything that the town might be doing in the future around that, like I said, there are opportunities with your neighbors. They're all in the same boat. Admiston Bromley and Whitewater and Greater Madawaska are all in the same boat as the town is. Although Greater Madawaska's got fairly decent garage at Calabogie, but they don't have anything outside of that. So anyway, it's a food for thought for the town for sure. Okay, so in terms of your winter control, you are, I don't know how much the committee or council knows about the minimum maintenance standards, but based on the class of roads, you are required to respond in timely manner and depending on the accumulation of snow. Minimum maintenance standards is not just about snow though, it's also about potholes and shouldering and all of those things. And hours of service dictates how long folks are supposed to drive, number of hours driving, and what you have to report, just like a trucker. The municipalities are not exempt from that. So you have, like I said, you've got your roads to deal with, your sidewalks, and your municipal facilities and parking lots. So municipal facility and parking lots, some of them are plowed by parks, and some are plowed by public works. So not all of your sidewalks are plowed. We have not been able to determine how that policy was made. There is nothing in writing that we can find. Your snow and ice control policy was from 2007. And it just basically says, it talks about roads. It just basically says with sidewalks is a very, I guess, a high level discussion. So this is an area, and that I cannot find a salt management plan that the town has either. So that is an area that should be addressed. Minimum maintenance standards, it's basically about due diligence. It is dependent on traffic counts and classes of roads. So in your asset management plan, you have not, I did not find the actual classes. They put them in 3 categories. They really need to be identified by the minimum maintenance standards in the regulation, which is 6. Your asset management plan uses local collector arterial, which I can only surmise what they are, but because I don't have these posted speed limits or the average annual daily traffic, we cannot tell which classes they are. They need to be identified so that your response under MMS is clear. So patrolling, your patrolling records. So under minimum maintenance standards, you have to patrol. It's obviously very important at all times of the year. They are paper. They are painful because I tried to figure out, so patrolling records are supposed to identify your deficiencies and develop your work plan. They're all on paper, to which the admin assistant painstakingly transfers as much as she can based on what she can determine onto a spreadsheet. But there is no work management system, so they don't actually necessarily get on there. Eventually, and hey, kudos to the foreman. They seem to know what needs to be done. But it's all in their head. Unfortunately, if your garage burns down, by the way, you have no records because that's where they are. Or there's multiple copies, and they're all paper. They're in little folders. So many municipalities have gone to electronic patrolling because they can also attach then the asset that's involved, and then they can respond. So because the patrolling records is the indication for the municipality that they've become aware. So you can become aware of a problem either by somebody complaining or through a patrol record. Once you become aware, you must address those. That's what the legislation says. And you have to address them within the minimum maintenance standards timeframe. So very, very difficult to do in a very paper-based approach. And not to mention, it's probably taking your admin assistant like half her day to do these things. This is ridiculous. It's not a great way to do work. She could be doing a lot more important things. As I said, and by the way, if you were ever challenged, so in other words, requested for disclosure, or there was some case, you would need to produce these records to prove when you were there, what you did, what kind of material did you apply to that road, at what point. Same thing with a pothole, to be honest. Like if someone loses their little car in one of your potholes, you're going to hear about it. So yeah, you need to know what you've done. When did you become aware? And so that's important. So as I said, the snow and ice policy it's actually not a policy. It is on your website. So if you want to go and read it, it's interesting, but it's not really a policy because it wasn't adopted by council. It's 2007. Like you've got, new roads and all kinds of stuff. So now your plowing routes are on the website on maps, but we haven't right now. There is no tracking of those in your system. So all of your trucks have GPS. They also apparently have, and they have the software to know if it's plow up, plow down. But they don't actually have the software to actually use that. And you should also know how much material is being deposited on the roadway. So, and that helps you not only to know your salt usage and your sandage usage, it also helps you with your inventory. So you have the technology, but you don't have the full technology. So, and you need that if you're going to ever, well, you need it for decision making, but you would also need it for any claim that you might have. So highly recommend that snow and ice policy move to a winter maintenance plan with a salt management plan and get it in front of council. So this basically is a snapshot from that, so I don't need to go into that, but it's I guess very high level. One of the things that municipalities have been doing, because they have GPS and they have GIS, is they're putting on their website, where's my plow? You can actually put on your website exactly where the plow is, when it was last there. That would reduce the number of phone calls to say, oh yeah, well, my plow was just here. It also helps you to analyze your routes to see whether or not they're the right route, how long they're taking, and whether you're meeting the minimum maintenance standards. So, and that's not actually complicated technology. It's actually fairly simple in today's world. So, so the planning, the salt and sanding routes are shown, but we don't know why some of the sidewalks are not plowed other than resources. You do have plow routes, 2 plow routes that are smaller sections with smaller trucks that kind of do pieces throughout the town. You know, the efficiency of that, you probably want to actually calculate how much time that takes to get to those different places. But I understand the rationale. They're smaller trucks in smaller areas, so that has been a reason. The town uses a wingman. I will tell you that I have a colleague I've been using for roads needs studies. He doesn't know of any other municipality in Ontario that's had a wingman in recent history. Your neighbors, Arnprior, no longer have wingmen. They phased them out about 3 years ago. It is unusual. We did hear about some areas that perhaps there's visual issues. Could they be addressed perhaps with some cameras and those kinds of things on trucks? It's obviously having a expense impact on the town. I think you could probably, if you were to point to the root causes of some of the expenses, that would be why. They'll certainly argue, there is an argument for that in certain cases. The other big problem you have in winter control is you don't have control over people parking on your streets. And so that is a problem for a variety of reasons. It's not great for you to walk out and your car's been plowed over. Damage can happen, all of those things. But it's also affecting their ability to deliver the service. So it's problematic. Weather monitoring is required in minimum maintenance standards. It's not adequately documented on your patrol records. So you need to do it 3 times a day from October to April, and once a day for the remaining of the year. And the reason you do that, of course, is to make sure you're meeting those minimum maintenance standards. The other thing that was unusual is municipalities should be tracking their weather events, and particularly a significant weather event. So under the Act, you can declare a significant weather event. It's usually the head of council that, or it can be delegated. And the reason you would do that is that it allows you the odd occasion to potentially, you don't have to meet the minimum maintenance standards during a significant weather event, but it must be monitored. Now, we did find a significant weather event announced by the county. And so sometimes the county level will do that, but the municipality would have to also declare those significant weather events. But you really should know how many days of snow you're getting and what you did. And the patrol records really didn't tell me that. So that is an area that needs to be addressed. As I said, the policies around whether it's anti-icing, salt management, all need to be done. I've really gone through this already. So here's this comes right from the OREG 23902, which is minimum maintenance standards. It's based on, as I said, annual average daily traffic and the speed. And then the reason this is important is because it literally drives everything that you need to do in minimum maintenance standards. So I'm not going to go through all this. I'm going to go this is in the regulation. But it's not a bad thing to kind of put maybe on your website to help people understand, because there's lots of calls that come in to the staff and they end up explaining this. As opposed to, if you had something that you could point them to quickly. So patrolling, you got to do 3 times, depending on the class of highway. You have to do 3 times every 7 days if you've got a class 1. I don't think you actually have any class 1s, but I can't tell. So, and obviously during the winter, you're going to be doing different types of patrolling. And then the response time is based on the accumulation on the roadway and how many hours you have to respond. Same thing with ice formation and etc. Now, most of your roads are within the town, so you probably have less issues than perhaps if you've got, you know, highways with drifting snow and all that kind of stuff. And potholes, the same thing. So if you've been, and what I'll say is the complaint database that we looked at didn't provide us with enough information to find out if they're actually collecting the information they need to be able to respond and actually record that they've responded to these different things. So when you become aware of a pothole, they have to look at the depth and all that kind of stuff. But they have certain times that they have to respond, but they do have to respond. They can't just leave the pothole there forever. Shoulder drop-offs. You don't have any unpaved roads. So you know, you have less issues around that. But you know, cracks and luminaires need to be inspected. You should be doing reflectivity assessments, perhaps get the county to I think they do it on a regular basis. You can get a contractor to do it. You should do those on a fairly regular basis. And of course, if you have downed signs, faded signs, you need to respond in a timely manner. I'm not even going to go here. You do have three bridges, so I'm not too worried about that. But this one is concerning. This one here is the commercial vehicle operators registration. So most of the hours of driving are contained on little cards in your garage. And they're not related to they don't contain the information that you need to do proper CVOR reporting. So why do you care about that? Your staff that are operating, they're there because it can actually affect their own license as well. So, and if any of them are operating outside of the town for somebody else or for, you know, for on the side, those hours count. So all we received in terms of looking at CVOR were kilometers that were driven on various trucks. That's actually not the reporting requirement. The reporting requirement is the number of hours, and the logbooks should have the start and the end and the odometer reading at the beginning and end of every shift. And ideally, electronic logging devices are the best. It's almost like, you know, a breathalyzer in your car. It's the same kind of idea. They're a lot easier to manage if they're electronic. So, so that is an area that needs to be addressed. Like I said, they're all paper right now, and they're very vulnerable because they could get lost. So the roads activities, so I took all of your spreadsheets for back to 2018 and then tried to put them together to find out what's actually happening. It was very painful. So, and I'm pretty good at Excel, so I can't even imagine for somebody who's not good at that. But I was able to pull down, so they were put in some categories. The sheets that were basically transcribed and did not always have the address and the location of where the work was being done. It didn't have necessarily, the winter maintenance didn't have the routes on it. And that's what you would need for minimum maintenance standards. You do need to say, yeah, this is where we went. This is, you know, the complaint came in, we became aware, we're going to go fix it. And this is the time that they became aware, and this is when we fixed it. You know, kudos for them to try. That's all I can say. They did the best they could with what they had, because they don't have any technology. But here's the thing. So probably the key thing for Public Works is that they do grouse cutting in two parks and along roadsides. We did discover through looking at the grass mowing routes, if you want to call them that, that literally Public Works and Parks folks almost come together at one point. So they're out, not necessarily on the same day, but they have seen them on the same day. And so not really sure the rationale is just the way it's probably always been. So, and on the other side, of course, we've got some winter control in parks. So you can see the range of things. They've got cold patching. Now, crack sealing, hardly anything, which really surprised me, because crack sealing is your maintenance ability to prolong the use of your roads over a period of time. There should be a lot more crack sealing. There should be more patching. Now, maybe they're together, I'm not sure. Again, you know, when you've got very archaic type of time and activity tracking, it's probably painful to do. So, like I said, materials management really isn't there. So, you know, you should be able to calculate how much salt and sand you are using. It's very manual. So that's all I could say with that. Facilities, I don't think I even need to tell you that your facilities are, the facility is in disarray in terms of, and to be able to do a good fleet management, like the mechanics got like half of the stuff is in his office and these books, and he does the best he can, but it, you know, doesn't have the proper facilities to do a good fleet management system, fuel management, all of which are quite manual. You do have salt locations all around town, which is actually not a bad thing. The only problem is that the staff are often filling those up manually. So the first round they get dumped up with a truck, but then if it keeps snowing, they're actually literally using shovels to put the salt in the locations. So, you know, just a bit of a risk on a health and safety perspective. And some of those, and we did notice too, some of your inventory, although it is gated, like you got a fence, a lot of your inventory is outside. That's maybe not the best situation. So documentation, everything's paper. You know, you've got staff, the foremen are entering everybody's time in these spreadsheets, these timesheets. It takes a significant amount of time, and then they're transferred over to the finance folks who re-enters everything in the financial system. So it's all done twice. The chance of error are huge. The waste of time is massive for people that are well paid and obviously weren't hired originally to be doing timesheets, to be honest. So very limited in terms of fleet management. And so how do you really plan your equipment and utilization of your equipment? You know, there's a lot to be saved for that. So this is a really weird thing, and this is your complaints database for Public Works. Now, this had been in place since 2015. It apparently was designed maybe by a student, and an access database. Nobody really knows. And it was very rudimentary, but like kudos to them that they did something. But it has no mandatory fields in it. So you have every kind of field and data in it that you can imagine, with no closing dates. So they have the date that the only thing that was mandatory was a date. I shouldn't even say that. The date could be left blank, because actually there was like a whole 91 of them or something that didn't have a date. So you have no idea what happened. It's never closed off. It gets sent off to somebody, and they're supposed to give the admin staff the result, and they're supposed to go back in and enter it all manually what they did. But the customer never gets any indication of what's happened. So, and like I said, it didn't flow in terms of being able to respond to minimum maintenance standards, because the categories that were created did not align with the minimum maintenance standards. So, like I said, it was a stopgap. Now, interesting, and I know the CAO is implementing Access E11, which is your new complaint or service request module, which will help, thankfully. Unfortunately, the staff stopped entering in the Public Works database at the end of last year. So you've had nothing for the year of 2023. So that's why the data, other than waste management, because the folks in waste management kept it up to date, but everything else is on. So you'll notice here that the other category is the biggest category. And that's because it's everything under the sun and there was no description of what it was. It was just a call. And of course, you know, people call for all reasons, you know, like bylaw infractions and, you know, everything else. So unfortunately, the other category was massive. I probably could have spent a whole bunch of time trying to figure out what it was, but it was quite painful. But obviously the most common calls are around the roads, you know, whether it's winter control. But again, it wasn't really segregated that way. So I'm just giving you a sense of what was there. So this is 5,000 calls over 5 years. It's really not that much. And I suspect that not everything was captured because it really wasn't a mandatory process. So, interesting, and that's why, who knows, it could also, over time, whether, you know, certain people weren't entering information, because you'll see a huge dip down and then it goes way back up. And then of course, 2023 is almost down. So it wasn't really designed to have good data. Access E11 will help, but all I can say is during that, there should be, make sure you've got categories that are going to be able to monitor minimum maintenance standards. Because I couldn't get snowfall, I had to go grab it. Nobody seemed to know how much snowfall you had, but you get a fair amount of snow. This is historical from Weather Stats CA. Luckily, you don't get too many days in April and October with snow. But on average, you get about 60 days of snow a year. So what does that tell us? That's when, you know, if you know, you can pretty well predict that to some degree. And that's where you should be looking at, should we be supplementing our staff with seasonal work? I was kind of surprised that there was no call-in group. Most municipalities will have a roster of call-ins that they can bring in, especially during continuing events, so that you don't violate your CVORs, you've got enough staff, and that kind of thing. So that's 60 days is normal in Eastern Ontario. Really don't see anything different. So, but you do. This is your routes, and what I would suggest is that through a GIS, you can do route optimization, but you're going to need to have more information than you currently collect around your routes. So basically, it's based on your current classes of arterial, collector, and local as to the response time. These are actually moving the snow as well. So when that's going to actually occur, your sidewalks. Now, this sidewalk plowing is this part here where it's red up here. My understanding is actually may not be plowed, but we're not really sure. So there's some areas up in the top here that we understand are not necessarily plowed during the continuing event. So parks and recreation. Oh, do you want me to stop, Chair, if there's any questions about Public Works?
Yes, maybe for a second, if you don't mind. Any questions? Councillor McDonald?
Yeah, thank you, Tammy. So far, I sit here getting frustrated because I did commercial snow removal for 13 years, and I've had my observations over the last while. And if anything, there's work to do. there's a lot of work to do. And I'm surprised in this day and age, we didn't have policies and procedures and all that sort of stuff set up, because you talk about liability issues with insurance companies and all that. You need to track everything and know exactly where you're going. So it's frustrating to sit and listen to it, but it's also a catalyst that we need to do work and get it done properly. So I'm going to be sending the CAO an email just with regard to if there's any working group, because there's a lot of work to do here. And especially if we're going into this season, to sort stuff out. And I wouldn't mind being part of there's a working group to sort out strategy and all that sort of stuff. Just with my background, I wouldn't mind assisting, because you need to know what's being done, where it's being done, and at the time, and just to protect ourselves, right? And it's hard work. Like, it's not about the guys. It's hard work when you're out there in the middle of the night plowing. But we also have to protect them and to protect ourselves. So I think there's work to be done here, and we do it urgently if we're going to get into this next season. So that's just my opinion so far. And thanks for all the work you're doing, by the way.
Robert, did you want to continue on, Chair? Or?
Just, I think CEO Tremblay has something to.
Sure. And I think as part of this, there's an implementation that will happen. I know I should just point out that she's here. The acting director of Facilities Maintenance and Operations is in the room and has already had some chats with the general foreman, and some decisions for the snow season will come to council quickly. And what I think would happen is there'd be regular reporting to the Committee of Facilities Maintenance and Operations. I think where that legwork would happen. I'm not sure, Councillor McDonald, if you're on that committee. I know that Councillor Legree is, but any council member can be part of that. And but just like the financial services review, not everything will be addressed right away, but there's some key things for this season that we're needing to do. One is software in the tandem trucks and being able to download that data. And then if we are going away from the wingman process, we've already talked about, can that happen this year? And I think there's agreement that it can. So there'll be some short order things that we'll need to bring to council in a timely fashion to make that happen. So yes, there's a lot of work to be done.
Yes, Councillor McDonald.
Follow up, and thanks, CEO. And I'll probably be sending you an email just with regard to some of the issues. So thank you.
Thank you. You continue on, Tammy. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And I know I'm on a short leash, so I'm going to try to be fast. So Parks and Rec, of course, you've got the recreation facilities and you got the maintenance piece. So our focus was on maintenance. Okay, so I just want to be clear that we really did not focus on the facility programming piece too much, as that wasn't really in our scope. So and so similarly, in terms of your current structure, or I should say the structure at the beginning of the review, that you have a supervisor, you got customer service reps, which are part-time, and a booking assistant. And it's important to note that the director of parks and this group didn't really have any administrative support other than the booking assistant. So the supervisor of recreation as well is doing all these spreadsheets with all these timesheets. So quite painful. And then of course you got your lead hand and your operators and laborers. And all of your parks. You do have a lot of parks in the town, and a lot of what we call land improvements, such as play structures. They're responsible for inspecting play structures, and they've got a variety of outside items, as well as obviously the interior items. So most of the costs were attributable to the facilities themselves, as opposed to parks, which and programming. Again, I'm not confident that they're actually allocated where they need to be. That's something to be looked at. Anytime you've got manual processes, I can just imagine that it's a lot easier to put them into an area as opposed to that. But you know, your ball diamonds and all that kind of stuff are in your park. So as far as we can tell. And of course, the salary and wages are very similar. So that's not really telling you too much, other than you did have a blip in 2017 not, you know, I'd have to do a drill down as to why there was a blip, but pretty stable expenses over time. Clearly, this is going to change. You've got a whole expansion of Mattaway occurring, so your operating expenses will obviously change in the very near future. The overtime is minimal in Parks and Recreation because they do have shifts, obviously. So their timelines or their schedules are based on shifts. So you're going to see less overtime. So where do they spend their time? And this is anecdotal, okay, as opposed to actually tracked. And I thank Randy Smith for taking the time to do this. But what the question we asked is, where do you guys mow and where do you plow? And so they do most of the parks, except for 2, as I mentioned. And contemplates is about and as well as some winter plowing, whether that obviously that'll change. The total estimated cost of doing mowing and winter control is about $71,000 a year. So the reason we did this is if you take our recommendation that you have one group of people do mowing and one group of plowing, that you can understand where the impacts would be. Unfortunately, we don't actually have a ton of information around how much it actually costs to mow those roadside pieces. Or I do have some, but if we look at it, it's almost a one-to-one swap between them. So in other words, move the mowing over from the public works folks to parks and the winter control over to public works, and it's almost a one-to-one relationship. And of course, sharing of equipment. That's the other piece, is that they have their equipment is segregated. So in terms of the findings, I have talked about a lot of these, so I'm going to be fairly quick. The staff are pretty dedicated, though. I gotta say, they do care about the town. You hear nothing but good things about the rec staff and the public works staff. So, I can't say it, they just don't have the tools that they need to do their job as effectively as they could. So in terms of a root cause analysis around these rising costs and challenges, we always put them in our fishbone. Duplicate. So on the people side, there's a lot of duplicate work, workload pressures, deadlines. There's a lack of training. I will say though, on the mandatory type of stuff, the town has done a good job. So it's just being able to go to the next level in terms of best practice is a little bit of a challenge. You are in a unionized environment, so it does have an impact on being able to make changes. You don't have a performance management system yet. I know the CAO is working on that. And there is a change averse organization in general. They don't necessarily want to, it's always been done that way. Although you do have foremen that came from other sectors, and they were quite surprised when they came to the town of the lack of technology to support them. So that kind of comes into our technology. You've got, they don't have access directly to their financial information. There's no mobile technology out there. Many spreadsheets in lieu of systems. Your truck technology is limited. Patrolling is manual. You don't have an asset management, work management system. So it's all. And it's related to the financial review that we went through this morning. In terms of the governance piece, the previous senior management team that really did create a them and us, the whole structure, and they actually use those terms. So, they'll say them and us, and vice versa. And I don't think it's because, but I will say all of them did indicate to us that recently it's starting to change. So they're feeling like they're becoming more of a team. So that's a good thing. We talked about the minimum maintenance standards. You've got, your Mataway expansion is impacting the two groups to some degree, because obviously there's a lot of effort in there, and there's a lot of angst around the next stage. Although I think that's being worked on, so that's a good thing. Measures, very few measures, even though interestingly enough, the public works in particular are very regulated. So on the water wastewater side, not a problem, but actually measuring service levels, as I mentioned, is not there. Poor complaint management, and reporting is siloed, and there's no service level agreements between basically what's expected, outdated policies, and again, very limited documentation around procedures. So the lack of workforce planning, like everything's very reactive. The staff don't know what they're going to necessarily be doing until they get there, other than, when they assigned a route for snow plowing, they know which route they're on. But everything else is quite reactive, unfortunately. Overall findings, actually, I'm going to, I've pretty well gone through this, so I'm going to go to the next slide because I really address the findings and the recommendations at the same time. So we put them into 5 groupings. On the customer service side, there needs to be that strategy, which I know it's actually on the radar. So the comments are to make sure that you have enough categories that you can track your minimum maintenance standards. You should update your winter control and summer maintenance performance standards and policies, and create a customer dashboard. Lots of times people are calling in to get updates on things they've called in on. If you can give them information that's, by the way, if someone called, and actually I was listening to the bylaw enforcement report. If people call it, if it's a property issue, that is not confidential information. You can post property information on your website. If there's an investigation being done on a property, that is not private information. Anything like that, give people what they need so that they don't call again, that they can see what's happening and then you're doing something about it. So I'm a firm believer in the show me where my plow is, show me where my road construction is. Actually, you've done a really good job on the road construction site. That's great. More of that. And actually, I would even add, if you were given $100 to spend in public works, where would it go? Kind of a budget simulation thing. That's really about the public engagement forum. So that's kind of on the customer service side. On the organizational side, as we had recommended you merge the 2 areas, because you got to get rid of that them and us. And not only that, so eliminate the duplication and leverage the skills. You've got some really good skill sets that are not necessarily being utilized to the best of their abilities. Fleet, I recommend that you bring all of your fleet in-house as much as you can. If it needs to be supplemented with additional resources, it's probably going to be cheaper. Certainly can do some of that analysis. Unfortunately, it's not really tracked really well against each fleet, but update your employee code of conduct. We mentioned actually in the finance review, and that formalized training piece. One of the things that as well, and this is kind of an interesting concept, but if you assign your public works and parks folks as municipal law enforcement officers, they could actually issue a ticket on somebody parking on the street when they're not supposed to. Just to answer Councillor McDonald's question about the difference between a charge and a ticket. You can actually now put administrative monetary penalties in, and those become tickets you can do that with any bylaw in the municipality. So you, as opposed to a charge under the POA, which will never go to court. So that's kind of that's a whole, I could probably do a whole other review for you on that, but and then, look at overtime policies, on call, your supervisors are on call, that kind of stuff, and hours of service, obviously, and the impacts on Mattaway. Right now, it would look like to me that it would be 3 people you would need to do the coverage, based on just doing actual calculations, and to move mowing over to parks. But it's really about your scheduling. You'll have to work through that, but that's about what I can't even imagine it being less than that with the size of the addition. You're going to, even though you might not be giving service to all these lessees, there's still going to be work to be done. They're going to have needs. So technology, basically developing a strategy to move to electronic patrolling and work management, and eliminate the paper-based processes such as the ridiculous purchase orders that are not purchase orders in public works. And of course, implement the GPS material tracking mechanisms as well, and having them have this access to the software. And as I mentioned, purchase orders, purchase orders and inventory are all manual. I mentioned that in the finance review, very painful, and do not follow proper accounting practices. And the purchase orders are not actually encumbered against the budget, so they don't actually mean anything. They're not used as a contract. They should. And moves to electronic management, because like I said, if your garage goes up in flames, you've lost all your history. So you need to get those digitized. And you probably will need, and in hand with the recommendations around finance, you're going to need some outside assistance to be able to do any of these kind of implementations. So in terms of planning and performance, again, it's really about having key performance indicators, and include that in your budget process, which we've also recommended that you look at a new budget software that includes financial, non-financial indicators. Work with finance on creating the proper jobs to mimic minimum maintenance standards in the GL structure. The other thing is that I didn't really mention, but I will, your equipment rates are significantly outdated. I don't know when the last time they were updated, but they are akin to about, I would say, 1990 rates. So you're charging out your equipment to the jobs they're under-resourced, basically. And what should happen is those equipment rates should be funding your replacement. So if you're going to do any assessment business case around outsourcing, you need to have equipment rates that are akin to what you would have in the private sector, because otherwise you're comparing apples to oranges. Some of the information that we pulled together indicate that a lot of your equipment is underutilized. There may be an opportunity in some cases. Maybe you should be renting some equipment as opposed to buying it. But it really does need to be managed through a fleet management system so that you can make those determinations. And then, of course, developing work plans based on those requirements and preventative maintenance programs. All of that right now is very, very much reactive, and it's all in the foreman's heads. So if they walk away, their history's gone. So in terms of service delivery, update that winter control plan, eliminate the windman where possible. There may be situations where you look at it and say, okay, maybe on an interim basis. I will tell you that Arm Prior told us that it was a phase. They phased in the changes. They didn't do it all at once. And it allowed them that ability to be able to do things a little bit differently. Explore the where's my plow idea. And I think council might rationalize sidewalk plowing. There was a lot of complaints when I did look at them. They didn't understand why their sidewalks weren't being plowed. The staff get stopped and asked, and really they say they don't know why. Just that it's on the route. So, and you know, perhaps you need to do a consultation with the public, because obviously it doesn't come free. So, you know, you have to be willing to pay for it. But if you're not going to plow certain areas, you should really have postings and make sure that you've got, you know, you're aligning with your standards. So we do know of other municipalities that have areas where they don't plow their sidewalks and they post that they don't plow them. So at least then there's no expectation that they're doing that. And then, of course, merge your grass mowing and parking winter control and sharing of the fleet, so that you're actually going to get better utilization of the plowing. One of the things that you know, municipalities should be starting to do is consider autonomous mowers. Golf courses have gone completely to autonomous mowers in many places. There's an opportunity to look at ways to reduce the requirements around having somebody actually sit on a mower, especially in areas that are not complex. Autonomous mowers work quite well. So the golf course that I'm a member at uses them, and they're the first in North America to do the entire golf course with autonomous mowers. So they are pretty cool, actually. But that would free up your staff to do things that are more value added. And you're going to have a lot of new roles in terms of the Mattaway expansion and that operating model. So, you know, that's got huge potential. But if there's opportunities to do that, that'd be great. And you could be, you know, one of the first municipalities in Brantford County to look at them. So those are our recommendations. The rest of it's really the implementation plan of all of those and the timelines. And we will send a spreadsheet out. We do that with all of our reviews, that you can take it on. And I think the staff will identify, you know, what's doable, timeframes. We've made suggestions, but there's capacity pieces here. So we have put in sort of timelines. We've also put in what we think things are going to cost. So I'm going to quickly fast forward to the last slide, which basically summarizes the investment piece. So there is an investment that we think are obviously huge in technology, but the payback we believe will be 4 years for these. And so there's going to be a lot of internal savings. And when I say that, it's capacity savings. If you look at how much time, and like I said, probably you could have 2 days a week that you're going to save of your staff's time of manual processes. Can you imagine what you could do with that time, you know, in terms of roadside maintenance, sidewalk maintenance, all of those things that are basically being wasted by very old paper-based processes that really shouldn't have to be done in today's world. So really, after 4 years, in my humble opinion, it would be cost neutral in terms of those savings. So, and I'm going to stop there and ask questions, because I know you have a ward ceremony, so I don't want to interfere with that, because that sounds pretty important.
Well, thank you very much, Tammy. It's a very detailed report, lots of information. We're going to have to kind of take back and digest. I was on the call this morning with corporate services. You see a lot of the overlap with, you know, outdated procedures and manual processes everywhere. So this is a really good learning document and stuff, and we need to kind of take it apart and see what we have to implement now and down the road. So do you have anything to add, CEO Tremblay, before I open it up?
So what, just in terms of next step, Mr. Chair, on Tuesday at council, we'll kind of adopt both reviews as guiding documents for staff to then look at implementation. We are looking at what changes we can make for this winter season. We've already merged the departments with Acting Director Collins helping us out in the transition and we're out for recruitment on a director. So we've made that call. The Aqua review is ongoing with a decision hopefully in mid-November, which would have an impact at the same time. And I think that it will require investments. So for instance, we likely will come forward if we're able to implement the wing issue. There might need to be some immediate investments in technology to make that happen. So you will hear from us in very short order. And the other part is bringing the teams together. So one, we've committed to the team that, as Tammy said, they're starting to work well together. Is there's going to be a training session, a team building session that the county will run in late October to bring them together and talk about how they can work together and some ideas. And the other one is there might be elements of this that we can substantiate in a policy or a procedure that may have existed. The issue is if it can't be readily produced to a consultant, it likely means we're not following it. So, so that will take some time. But I know all these reviews, I know they take time, but they're pretty important to understand the state of affairs. And the master plans do the other piece of it is the long range thinking, and then having the staff team to deliver it, and then the constant reporting to council on KPIs, so you know where we're at. So it's a lot of work, but it's very important work. And I think the work of the consultant and council's attention on the matter, and it's not the end, it's the beginning, really, to be honest. And but I think they're important guiding documents for us to then dig deeper on. So important work.
Thank you, CEO. And I apologize. I see John in the background. I think we missed him this morning too. So I don't know if you have any input or anything that you want to. No, you're good.
Yeah,
Okay.
just to the CAO, just maybe send an email out with the expectation potentially that we all watch both the presentation this morning and this afternoon to expedite the process on Tuesday at the council meeting, so that we're coming in there with fresh information. And Tammy and John, I see you in the background. Thank you. This is a very common sense approach to and data driven and appreciate it. And like you said, CEO, we have stuff to do to move forward, but we need this foundation and this data to do that. So thank you to everyone involved there.
Yes, thank you. Any last minute anything from anybody? Or well, thank you very much, Tammy, John. We really good report. So thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care.
Have a good
Bye
evening.
now.
Bye now.
Oh,
I think we lost someone.
We just lost Jason accidentally.
I think that was the end of the business. So I don't know if we can mark for the minutes that we're adjourning at 5:21.
Yeah, I was just gonna say we're adjourning at 5:21.